Hello everyone and welcome to Wrestling Reverb. I am your host Josh as always. It's Royal Rumble week. It's a very exciting time to be a wrestling fan. I think Royal Rumble week is probably on par with WrestleMania week for me. It's just a really fun time and I thought, with coming back after my little break from Wrestling Reverb, I was like, I need something to make this feel a little bit different, make this feel a little bit bigger. So here I am on the internet, on Twitter, and I was like, I think I need a friend. And lo and behold, a lovely gentleman and me have a kind of touch base, and we're like, let's do something for Royal Rumble week. So I'm not gonna screw up his intro too much because I couldn't do it justice. So I'm gonna let this lovely man introduce himself. Tell the world who you are.
Hello, Wrestling Reverbites out there. I'm Fowl Original from @Fowl_Original on the Twitters. And I've been invited by your lovely host and actual host of this show to come and have a little chat.
And so we're going to chat Royal Rumble today, obviously, because Royal Rumble is a big deal. There's a lot happening this weekend, along with Takeover and stuff like that. But to get yourself in the Rumble mood, I thought, what a way to come back and actually talk about the last however many years of the Rumble there's been. And I'll go back through some of the events, some of our favourite moments and matches, memories from the Royal Rumble. So I think we should just, jump right into this and just get started. What would you say is, for you personally, what makes you excited about the Royal Rumble in general?
Well, we had a little pre-chat before this, which was great, actually.
We did. Little is understating it. It probably went for about 50 minutes.
Pretty much went for that before this. As I said in the pre-chat, and I said on my show earlier on, Weekly Wrestling Recap on YouTube, I really love the fact that Rumble, just the match itself, you've got 30 different wrestlers, or maybe more some years. So you've got 30 different possibilities, and from that you have like infinite possibilities off that, for reasons why they'd win it. And I'm always excited. It's that event that everybody knows. Like, everybody knows this event. Yeah, like I kind of in our little pre-chat before, I was saying, like, you can say Royal Rumble to pretty much anyone and they know that it's a WWE event. It's a wrestling event. They're like, even if it's, is that wrestling show, they know what Royal Rumble is. It has name value. Yeah, and like for us in the UK, like I kind of said this earlier on, I said I'd save it for the show because I thought we'd go for 2 hours otherwise, just in the pre-chat. We could have quite easily done that. Like for us in the UK, wrestling was during the Attitude Era in the year 2000. Wrestling was just on Sky, which is a pay platform, pay TV, and it was on Sky Sports. We got wrestling on terrestrial TV on Channel 4, so just through an aerial in the year 2000. And we got 4 of the pay-per-views a year on free TV. And the first one was the Royal Rumble 2000.
Oh, so that's a good one too.
Oh, yes. I said I'd save it. And there's some controversy with that one, actually, over here in the UK. It caused a few changes to how wrestling was presented, actually. But there was a big deal that was made between the WWE and Channel 4 to show 4 of the pay-per-views a year. So that was the Rumble. We actually got Invasion as one of those ones because we got Fully Loaded. We'd get Armageddon, and we'd get one more. The rest were on this pay channel. And I loved the Rumble. It took me, I recorded it. I wasn't allowed to stay up, but I recorded it. It took me like a week to watch it in like hour chunks after school. And oh my God, it just changed my viewpoint. Everybody knew wrestling. Wrestling was on breakfast, the Big Show was on breakfast TV. We had Kurt Angle on Saturday morning, cartoon shows and stuff. Like there was a segment with Ant and Dec who do I'm a Celeb, and they had a show where Kurt Angle and Trish Stratus were in there. And I remember just thinking, why are they on Saturday morning? Oh yeah. And we had WCW was here on Channel 5. Wrestling was massive here between the year 2000 and 2003, obviously before as well. Yeah. But we didn't really see the Attitude Era properly until the year 2000.
We were the
damn.
same in Australia. From memory, I was only young. I started, like, what I can remember, I've been told I watched earlier, but I started watching wrestling about the year 2000, 2001. I was only, you know, like 6 years old, like 5 or 6 years old. But I was told, my older brother was the one who introduced me to pro wrestling. He watched it with my dad, and so I kind of was at the very end of the Attitude Era. Obviously, I've gone back and watched it all now, and I know what the hell was going on. But, I mean, so I tapped in. One of the first wrestling memories I remember, and I don't know why, this would have been like 2002 probably, but one of the vivid first memories of wrestling I can remember is Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, and Chris Jericho for the Undisputed Championship. I think it was like a 2-on-1 handicap match. It may have been a triple threat, and Stephanie nearly won the title. I don't know why that sticks in my brain all the time, but that always does. Like, what a weird wrestling memory to have, like, you know, vividly I can remember sitting down on the TV watching that.
Like, when we first got wrestling over here, like, I didn't have cable TV or satellite TV at home. My mom was like, you don't need it. So we'd watch this slice of what was the international version of Heat every week on a Sunday. We'd get that.
Oh, yeah,
and
we got that too.
Oh, yeah, and I loved it every single week. And, like, I loved that show, but I wouldn't be able to watch Raw or SmackDown normally because they were on pay TV. Yep. Then my grandma, like, this is like how I'm so massively into wrestling now. My grandma was like, you can come around and watch it on Sky on a Friday night and a Saturday night, but you have to do chores and stuff. And we'd go around. I was quite young still, so go around, and then at 9 p.m. we get to watch Raw. I can't remember where this is going now. Oh, yes. So SmackDown started around about that time.
Yep.
And I used to go around to, like, so I'd go to relatives' houses, and they'd kind of be chatting away, and then I'd just go to their TV and put on Sky One, and I'd watch SmackDown. And I have a vivid memory of having to explain what the right to censor were to one of my, like, older relatives, because I think it was when the cat came out in, like, oh no, it might have been the cat. She came out in like a burlap sack, and she went to start stripping on it, and I was like, yeah, so I can't really explain this to you. I do apologize, but yeah, sorry, don't know what to do about this.
Wrestling are like that though. You're like, you watch it and you're like, you watch it so you expect it. But if you're watching someone that doesn't know what wrestling is and that come on, you're like, yeah, I don't know. Like I was saying to you before, and I've even said on the show previously, like, I watched TLC with two very non-wrestling fans and stuff like that. And the first match on that show was the Mixed Match Challenge finals. And when Carmella and R-Truth did a dance break, I was my friends were looking at me and they're like, "Is this a wrestling show?" I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Why are they dancing?" I'm like, Honestly, I don't know why they're dancing. I don't actually know why they have a dance break. I don't think they just do it. And it's just so wired into our brains that we just are so like, yeah, this is just normal. We're just, people dance break. People used to take off their clothes. Like, that's just what it was.
Yeah, like wrestling logic, dictates that you don't ask questions. Yeah, you just enjoy the show.
You just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, when you start asking questions, though, stuff starts to fall apart, and you just realize you're like, okay, if it's a non-wrestling fan that just calls you on, like, just a cross section of what you're watching, they'll always come in at that 15-second mark when you don't want them to be. They'll come in during the Bobby Lashley sister segment.
Oh, they came in. I was watching the Mandy Rose segment with the hotel room, and my cousin walked out, and he was like, what are you watching? I'm like, SmackDown.
I'm like, yeah,
watching SmackDown. She's just in a hotel room. Just back off.
Yeah, it's like, you can't explain it. Like, every single time I would try to get someone to watch it with me, or it's like brief glimmers of anything like a little too racy. And like, I'm from quite relatively religious family. We turned the channel when someone was in bed together and they were fully dressed and they were had pillow talk. I mean, the amount of times that, like,
oh my.
And it's like, we're sitting there, so I'm like, oh yeah, you go and watch wrestling in the back room, yeah, fine. And then someone come in to check on it. What are you watching?
Maybe it's giving birth to a hand or something, and you're like,
panties match. It'll be like, they come in and they'll be like, You watching? Yeah.
Yeah, this
Like
is pro
you just
wrestling. Got a problem?
just the basic technical bout between it would have been like say Dean Malenko versus someone. I'd be like, you just missed that. I'm sorry, but we have to go through this. But right after this, we've got like a really sweet segment with like Booker T and Stone Cold in a supermarket. But yeah, sorry, we've got to go through this first.
So wrestling is I think I know I'm biased because I just love pro wrestling, but it is the best form of entertainment because there's so much. There's so much. You can't pinpoint it to any kind of one form of entertainment. It really is a spectacle of so many genres of entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think with circling back to the Royal Rumble, I think that is the best night. It's just the best night of so many different forms. It's got surprises. It's got great wrestling. It's got I just think the match itself, the event itself, it really is. It does feel like a different level than, other than maybe WrestleMania. It does feel like a different level of fun.
I think you're right with saying the spectacle and like the uniqueness of it because you can see the success of something when you see many people copy it. And I mean, how many variations of I know that the Royal Rumble is essentially just a battle royal, but the presentation, the way that it's named, the amount of other companies and wrestling companies that have taken that concept,
agree.
of Royal Rumble and said, it's like a Royal Rumble, but this is what we do differently. TNA infamously did it with their reverse Royal Rumble.
Oh, yes.
I mean, reverse Battle Royal. Yeah, and you just think everyone, and it's like, oh, it's like the Royal Rumble, but because
it'll always be that comparison, that will always be the staple of it. No matter how many times someone tries to, change up the rules or do whatever it may be, it'll always be, this is a match that's like the Royal Rumble. It's just the centerpiece of what that, because like you said, when you actually break down a Royal Rumble, it's essentially just a battle royal with random intervals, really.
Yeah,
that's really all it is. But that kind of brings me to this: is like if you broke down the Royal Rumble match and you had to pick one element that is your favorite about that match, what would it really be if you had to choose?
See, I mean, I've always been the big fan of the surprise element of it. I think wrestling, a lot of wrestling where I tend to pop a lot for, I really pop for surprises. If it's something that I didn't think was going to happen or I kind of thought might, but oh my God, it is. With the Rumble, it's the ultimate surprise. You hear that, and the second you hear it, you don't know what's going to happen. You legitimately do not know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and it's just like that brief moment between the buzzer and the person's music where it's just like that. It feels almost like hours are passing by. You're just staring at the screen. They do the camera pan to the Titantron, and you're just like waiting. And you're like, it brings me back to last year, the Women's Royal Rumble, and it was number 5. I remember this very briefly, and it was like they panned to the thing, the buzzer went off. You're looking, and then Lita's thing comes up, and you're just like, holy crap, it's Lita, and that element of surprise and that element of excitement, and you're just like, this is so incredible. It wouldn't have mattered if, whoever it may have been that come out at that spot, you're just like, this is incredible. Whether it's Lita, whether it's Sarah Logan, whether it's whatever it may be, it's just that element of that, I don't know what's coming up next. It's the unknown.
And like and I think a lot of it is that it's a pure nostalgia pop straight away. The second, as you said, the second Lita's music hit, I remember like 15-year-old me went, "Oh my God, it's Lita!"
That's like, I was like, the 10-year-old in me jumped out of his seat and like just lost his mind and was just like, "This is what." It's nostalgia. It's fun. She did what she had to do. She was in there for 5-6 minutes, whatever it may be, 10 minutes, whatever. She got thrown out. We were really angry, like, oh, Lita's gone. And then it was on to the next. Tori Wilson came out, and Trish Stratus and Molly Holly. Disclaimer: who is my favorite women's wrestler of all time? I love Molly Holly.
You're a big fan of Mighty Molly. You're a big fan of Mighty Molly, I see.
I was more of a fan of shaved head Molly Holly when she come out with the different wig on every week. That was like
nice.
Molly Holly. I just think. I could go on a tangent about Molly Holly for hours. I just think she's so...
We seem to have a like of Nydia as well. I saw that on Twitter the other day. Massive crush on Nydia for the longest time.
Nydia
of my
is
life.
so good. Jamie Noble and Nydia on Tough Enough, and then she come in and they would like that, and I was like, yes, Nydia, I love you. But Molly was just so underappreciated, I feel like. She's just one of those ladies that works so hard, and I don't think got enough recognition for it. I think it was just a different time and stuff like that, and she had a different
She was a worker. She was a worker in a time of no real work rate expected of the women.
No, and I think if you take Molly Holly and you put her into today's aspect, prime Molly Holly from back in 2003, 2004, and put her in today, it would work. She is just a very good worker. But I just think it was just a different time. But anyway, yeah. Back to the Rumble and just like that element of unknown and stuff like that. You're just waiting on the edge of your seat. I only bring up the women's Royal Rumble is because there was so many surprises in it last year. It was the first of its kind, and you didn't know the expectation of it. And it was just, I think it was. I don't know if you agree with me in this sense, but you might not. But I think it was long overdue that the ladies got a Rumble. I think it was time.
I think personally, like from last year's Rumble, the Women's Royal Rumble stole the show.
Oh, it did.
That's just no doubt, yeah, and that automatically did. One of so I'll give a quick shout out to you. The original Chin Man on Instagram is my housemate, and he's also a colleague. And at the original Chin Man is a wrestling fan. But he watches events here and there. He's actually watching the Rumble with some people that will be doing a roundtable with me coming up actually in the future. But he was talking about the Women's Rumble, and we talked about it the day after. Now we're both red-blooded men, and it was interesting. Like when we were talking about the Women's Royal Rumble, we weren't like, oh my god, like Trish Stratus came back. Oh my god, how good did she look? It was like, oh my god, Trish Stratus came back. How good did she look in that ring? Like it was a totally.
It's really weird that element has come in because back in time when Trish was active and in her prime, it was Trish is a really, really pretty hot lady, and who also and I don't mean this in any disrespect, she wasn't the greatest worker of all time by any means. Trish was good in the ring, but it wasn't about that. It was what she looked like. But now you look at her, and it was the element of it doesn't really matter what her aesthetic is. It doesn't matter what she looked like. It was more the fact of, can Trish still keep up with today's work rate? Which she can.
Yes. And I had massive respect, yeah. Like it was weird to hear some of the stuff that Trish had said about like those gravy ball matches, pudding matches and all that. I remember at the time thinking, oh, well, obviously she didn't care. But she says like, I hated it because I wanted to have a wrestling match, and she's one of those women who she came in and she wanted to be a wrestler. She was a fan of professional wrestling when she was younger. She wanted to be a wrestler. She came in to me, is like the opposite of Eva Marie.
Yeah, and I completely agree, because Trish has said in multiple interviews and in multiple things, she's just like, yeah, I had to have these gravy bowl matches and bra and panties, but if I'm going to have these matches, I'm going to, throw me off the stage through this gravy bowl. Make people respect at least, yeah, we're having these, very sexualized matches, but at least try and add the element of pro wrestling into these, which I always respect. I've always been, for whatever reason, I've always been a very big women's wrestling fan through all the times, through, from Trish to Eve Torres to Caitlyn to AJ to now. Like I've just always been, I just always thought there was a little bit more that the ladies could do. I just think, even watching it, I was like, this girl, you could tell which girls could work. Like the Beth Phoenixes, the Natalias, the whoever it may be. You could tell that those ladies could really go. And they just, it's like they've always said, it's hard to have a match in 3 minutes. But what I always loved about Trish is that even if she was going to be in a 3-minute bra and panties match, she was going to do Hurricane Runners. She was going to do, arm drags and whatever it may be. Yeah. And she was going to make you at least respect the fact that I love wrestling, and I'm going to wrestle in these matches.
Yeah, like one of the most, and it's always a weird thing to seem to think, like, if you can look at it in two ways. You can look at it like it's a sexualized act, or it's her just having a wrestling match. Mm-hmm. But anytime she did, because obviously Trish did a Luthez press, and the amount of times, if you think, looking back at it now, bra and panties matches involved her doing a Luthez press in lingerie, because she's like, you know what? I don't care if my clothes are essentially falling off me as I have this match. As you said, I'm going to have an actual wrestling match. It's just that it's hidden with me kind of getting slightly more naked as I have this match.
Yeah, and like stuff like that when you take it into the, like you said with the Women's Royal Rumble, it wasn't about what Trish Stratus looked like or whoever it may be. It was that, look how she did that bulldog. Look how she's taking this move. Look at all these bumps and stuff like that. You know, even when Trish got thrown out, she went for the Stratisfaction or Stratosphere. I always get them two. Which one's the bulldog?
Yes, Stratisfaction's off the second rope, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's the Stratus. Okay, yeah. Anyway, so she got thrown out by Sasha, and you're just like, damn, that was a nasty fall. And even like you look at people who, you know, weren't known for their in-ring work, people like Tori Wilson. She comes back, and it was probably the best Tori Wilson's ever looked in the ring. In that sense, it's just like, if you give these ladies the opportunity to let these girls, you know, wrestle a match, I think you could probably get a lot more out of them in the time that they were actually there.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Rumble worked so well last year. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that there's a lot of cynicism about, like, the women's evolution and where it's come from, but at the same time, that particular event, putting it... Okay, we know why it was in the main event now, because of the Ronda situation.
Yeah, obviously.
But end of the day, the women were being put on a massive platform there. Some of those women probably had longer in that Rumble than they've had in careers of their career match length.
I agree with you completely, and it's just it's, you know, you say a lot of things like people do have their things about the women's evolution, and it's like, oh, it's just, some people say it's just one big publicity stunt and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And why I understand what they're saying, the wrestling fan in me sees it as they've worked so hard for this. But even in a business sense, why wouldn't they market this? And why wouldn't they do things like this? It'd be silly not to, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. No, of course. Like, my mom the other day, we were talking about wrestling and stuff. I had to basically explain, because she's not really, her finger isn't on the pulse of wrestling as such. And I was telling her about how women's wrestling is so, like, popular now and stuff. Because I was telling her about it. She was like, well, you know, people don't really watch the women's wrestling. They're just dancing around in their underwear. And I was like, Mom, they don't do that anymore. Like, they don't. But having to take that stigma away from what they did, they're doing a damn good job of it. It's slowly getting out there that women can wrestle and look good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily, but it's not gonna, and I think that's the big disconnect. Like there was, just very briefly tangenting, but after the Alexa Bliss segment last week, I remember watching that after to hear the crowd reaction. So I didn't watch the WWE YouTube one. I watched like an actual live show, clip of it. And it starts off, and I remember like he's going into the room, and this is how much wrestling and the fandom and the audience has changed. Like, they went in, and you hear everyone going, like, kind of giggling, and then as they see Alexa Bliss, you hear everyone just doesn't even cheer. They automatically are quiet. And I heard one person in the back going, woo! I was thinking, it's just one person. You know, that's how much it's changed. Where to the point where people were like, kind of, yeah, but does this mean that Alexa's having a wrestling match later, or why was this?
And you know, like, it's weird. Like that, I ran a poll on my Facebook page, and it's like I asked people how they felt about that, and it kind of, the biggest poll I've ever done. It got like 700 votes or something like that. I don't know. And so many people were just writing in the comments like. Why is this happening? If this is a part of a storyline, at least they understand why someone's walking on her changing or whatever it was. But this literally led to nothing. It was just they tried to add an element of sex appeal into the show when it didn't fit, especially in this time.
And now that Alexa's been announced for the Rumble as well, it's a bit like, but why? Well, why was this? Why did this even happen?
It led to literally nothing.
This has not got her over. Yeah, it's not got her over. It's not got anyone. And I always say that, you know, like if a segment happens and we don't understand why it's happened, that's fine. If it's probably going to get someone over, if it's going nowhere, then at least like Nation of Violence, Samoa Joe, Impact. If you're going to have him kidnapped by a bunch of people in ninja masks, and not explain it, that's fine. We're cool with that. We just don't want to see him naked. For any reason,
yeah. No, I agree.
Like if it's like just walking on the shower, and then it's like it felt really weird and maybe just out of place. But going back to the Rumble, my God, last year's Women's Rumble was fantastic. And I'm a big fan of Asuka. And she needed that win.
Oh, yeah, and it was really like, so, you know, leading into the Rumble last year, I think there was a sense of, is Asuka going to, like we say about the Rumble, there's 30 different people to choose from, and anyone could make a case that they're going to win the Rumble, and you really can never pinpoint and say this person is definitely winning the Royal Rumble. Sure, there was an aspect around Asuka of this may happen. I think Asuka may be the one, but you didn't know. No one can really ever predict the Rumble. That's what I like about the Royal Rumble. And with Asuka last year going into it, like I said, there was this element of can she do it? And when it came down to Asuka and Nikki, you're like, I remember my first thought going into that. I was like, first thing I was like, okay, the ladies have done it. This is really a great match. It was a great Royal Rumble match. They've done it. And then as soon as I seen it was Asuka and Nikki, I'm like, okay, Asuka's going to be the one to do this. I don't think Nikki Bella's going to be the one to do this here. I know a lot of people have their opinions of the Bella twins. I am in the minority of internet wrestling fans that I think the Bellas add a different kind of element to the women's division, and I do think they have their place.
Controversial, but I do agree with you. They have their place.
They have their place. They bring in a different set of eyes to wrestling, and as much as people don't want to admit it, why I know Brie had her issues in her comeback last year, and I do fully aware of that. I do think Nikki can work to a certain degree. I don't think she's the greatest thing ever because she isn't, but they do hold their own. I don't like what I'm basically saying is I don't understand how you can say the Bellas cannot wrestle. That's just my opinion. I understand the people that don't like them and stuff like that. I get it.
I see it now. I totally agree with that viewpoint. Yeah, like a lot of the times, it's really easy to make fun of the Bellas.
It is.
It's really easy.
And
they don't make
I'll be
it
the first
hard.
one to say I've done it too. Trust me.
Yeah, they don't make it hard at all. So you just but yeah, they don't. So because of that, like it's really easy to when stuff happens like the Brie Bella stuff was happening last year. It wasn't because we're like, oh my God, Brie's botching, she's terrible. It was because we were like, well, we know that she can actually wrestle. If Nikki was doing it, you'd be like, well, this is expected of her. But again, as she said, she can actually work. And you know what? She's a damn good heel. She really is. Brie isn't. Brie isn't. Like, Brie's just about a baby face, but as heel, she can't do it. I get it. But Nikki is fantastic as a heel.
Nikki Bella can generate that you genuinely don't like this girl. Girls don't like her because they want to be her. They want, she's, quote unquote, has the fakeness to her. Girls don't like that. She's, she was with John Cena. She's very materialistic. She is just, if you watch Total Divas or Total Bellas, there is that sense of entitlement to a certain degree from Nikki Bella. People don't like that. She's a great heel. She's a great heel inside of the ring. I think she's a very good heel inside of the ring. But as a babyface, Nikki Bella is terrible. I can't stand Nikki Bella as a babyface. She hasn't got a likable element about her, in my opinion.
No. But that's the thing, is I feel like they have totally that's their brand. Brie and Nikki Bella are good cop, bad cop, and that's fine. I get it, and I actually really like. I wasn't a big fan of their kind of feud with Steph, like obviously, for just terrible delivery of lines. But
I'm gonna make you my bitch.
Exactly. I wish you died in the world. And I was like, oh. But it was like, why? This is. But it was terrible. It was not believable. And I thought, all right, but why are they? And I remember hearing the rumors, around Rumble time of Nikki Bella having a program with Ronda. I remember thinking, you know what? If you want to get someone over as a super babyface, you put them up against Nikki Bella. But then I was like, but isn't Nikki Bella hanging out with Ronda? How are they going to do this in the space of a week? Oh, okay, cool, just turn them.
Yeah,
just
and like
turn.
As much as we, a lot of people with talking about the women and evolution and stuff like that. A lot of people are like Becky and Charlotte should be the main event. Do I agree that they had a better match? 100,000% I agree. Do I think that, they deserved the main event spot? Maybe, but at the same time, more people know who Ronda Rousey and Nikki Bella are than Becky Lynch and Charlotte. And I don't mean that as a disrespectful thing. It's just more eyes would be on the fact that Ronda Rousey's in a main event. The female audience, the female demographic from E would know who Nikki Bella and Brie Bella are. That is a money match. Yeah. That is your main event.
Yeah, and it's always, and I think that's something that a lot of fans these days might find hard to understand, but it's not about your favorite wrestler being in the main event. It's always supposed to have been about whoever's at the main event draws the most money.
I completely agree.
That's fine. And then it trickles down to everyone else. If you've only got 100 butts in those seats, you're not going to get a lot of money. If you want to put on a technical masterclass in the main event, fine. A certain segment of your audience will want to see that, but some people won't want to see that. Some people will want to see. They'll want to see something like I look at like Taker's matches at WrestleManias. Like CM Punk versus Undertaker is a much different match to Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels.
I 100% agree.
CM Punk Taker is more of a it's a high flying Taker's trying to hang with Punk. And with HBK and Taker, those matches, it was Michael's trying to hang with Taker. And so you could say to someone, watch both of these matches. Some of them would absolutely hate Taker versus Michaels because it requires you to know like their history maybe, and it's a little bit hard to see. But Punk versus Taker, and you're like, my God, that's my match. And
it's weird.
If you put that in the main event, if you put that in the main event, Michaels versus Taker, people would watch. But I guarantee you that more people will turn up if Roman Reigns is at that main event just to boo him.
Oh yeah, and I completely agree. It trickles down to everything. You look at Roman Reigns in Royal Rumble, okay, a few years ago. When he first got that reaction of just, it was just a tremendous boo. Like there was no one wanting Roman Reigns to win this. I think the Daniel Bryan element, didn't really help him and stuff like that. And it was, but even looking at that in the moment, I was angry. I was like, what the is going on? Like it's Roman is just, it's like what they were chanting, we want Rusev at the end because he wasn't eliminated. I'm like, oh my God, that was the only person that would never get cheered was Rusev. And now they're cheering for him. Even Rock came out and they were still kind of like, confused, and Rock's face said it all. He was like, what is going on? And you fast forward to Roman in the main event of Mania with Brock that year, the first time, and people like, this shouldn't be the main event, blah 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 blah. But like Roman Reigns was, I know it's gonna be cliche to say, but he was the guy that was it was the perfect. Sure, WWE didn't predict that he was going to get booed out of the building like that at Rumble, but they certainly made it work, and there was no bigger match at that point from the Rumble than Roman and Brock. So, you take into elements of stuff like that. Like I said before, WWE is a business, and they have to make money. Mm-hmm. It's not about... Sure, they want to please everybody to a certain degree, and it trickles down. We're going to watch WrestleMania. They know that they have us. They know that we're a very core... a part of their fan base, but they have to try and get other people to watch this. We're going to watch it regardless.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've seen a lot of, like, the whole gatekeeper mentality, like, of wrestling sometimes. It's like it's only going to be successful if you get more people into it, because it's something where, if only 15 people are watching, but if you can, we've watched some pretty bad stuff over the years within wrestling as the core wrestling fans. We've seen some weird stuff. So as you said, we're going to watch regardless. You could sit here all day and say, I'm not going to watch Raw ever again, but you blatantly will the second that, say, Bret Hart decides to pop up or something. Hogan turned up, got one of the biggest reactions, because we're all, at the end of the day, we're happy to watch the product. But you have to draw that extra audience in. Total Divas, I watched the first season of Total Divas religiously because I watched it for the behind the scenes.
So did I.
Like, I remember.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I remember
so
thinking.
did I.
I remember thinking. All right, so this happens on the run up to this event, and it's basically 3 months back, so I can roughly see what's happening. Okay, and then I remember watching it first and go, is this a work? Is this legit? Is this actually happening? Is Eva Marie really in trouble with Steph? Did Steph come back? And I was enthralled. Yeah, I was totally enthralled. And then it got to a point where it became less about the wrestling and more about them. And I could see this shift where they were like, okay, so we've got our female audience here, and they will watch wrestling. And so some things that started seeped over, like, I don't look at them as bad things. I look at them as really good things. Like last year's, it being a women's rumble to kind of headline the whole event, it made the event better. Like, it really, really did. And I couldn't have said that a few years ago. No, because of the depth of the women's roster to begin with. But you got some really good women out there, and having the women's rumble as the end of the show, the way to really kind of show everyone how far they'd come. Goddamn, like, I hated the Bellas kind of getting involved in that, and I felt like disappointed, and I felt a little bit almost like disheartened with it. Like, I was like, is this what we're going to get after all of that? It was a flash in the pan, and it's back to basics. It's lowest common denominator. But that's not for me. That's for the person that's never watched wrestling before. And as you said, it's like, I know Nikki, but you know what? I'll give it a shot. And then they're a lifelong fan. And but who am I to not allow them to have that experience?
Yeah, and you come down to the Rumble last year, and like with Asuka and Nikki, and you know, from our point of view, we're full on Asuka. Like, let's do this, Asuka. It's time for, get on the Asuka train. Let's go to Mania. But for that girl that's watching Total Divas, she's cheering for Nikki Bella. She's going for Nikki Bella, and that was two very different worlds of wrestling meeting in the middle. It was the two. Yeah. It was the opposite ends of women's wrestlers. You've got Asuka, who is a very Japanese strong style, will kick the crap out of you, and you've got Nikki Bella, who is the quote unquote female American wrestler in the sense of a mainstream American female wrestler. It was just two worlds meeting, and it was two fan bases meeting in the middle, and regardless of the outcome, whether it was going to please a lot of people would have been upset that Nikki didn't win, that demographic, but the core wrestling fans were very much Asuka all the way, and it was just a very cool little gel into the middle, and I honestly liked the way it went, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, no, I think that night really grew that fan base, and showed a lot of people who may have gone away from women's wrestling for a time to kind of come back to it. And mainstream news, great Rumble as well. Actually, as I said, like even the men's Rumble was a little tepid. But
yeah, I think so too.
Like even though like that year it was the year of the Japanese. And I could see, in my opinion, I felt like it was kind of to appease a few people who might have wanted to come from New Japan to say, "Hey, we do push Asian Americans, or we will push Asians." Yeah. And I remember thinking, I was like, "Ooh, who are they wanting to come over?" And it felt like that's what was happening. And so I didn't believe it. And when Nikki Bella started, but Asuka winning that, she can say that she won that, and that was the first Rumble.
It was only one first ever, and no one can ever take that away from Asuka. It is what it is. I know that her and Charlotte had a fantastic match at WrestleMania.
Oh my god, yeah!
I love that. Was one of my favorite matches of last year's WrestleMania. I thought it was a really, really good match, and Charlotte won. Asuka fell off the bandwagon a little bit and kind of lost her way with the program with Carmella and stuff like that. I know everyone had their opinion on that. But even if all of that, I know she went all through these peaks and valleys. Look at her now going into this year's Rumble. She is the SmackDown Women's Champion. She's potentially heading into WrestleMania with that championship. You can't say that her losing at Mania, took away from her too much. Yeah, it went through its a little bit of a time, but sure, she doesn't have the aesthetic and the kind of feel that she had before, going into the Rumble this year. But, I mean, Asuka's doing fine.
I think 2019 is the year to rebuild Oscar, and that's what I'm big fan. We're a big fan on the Fowl original show, like, of Oscar, and I just hope that this year they can rebuild her and she gets a chance. She, like, I kind of, you might know that she's the Japanese social media correspondent. She was recently made that, so I think that she'll hold that title for some time. And I hope that she does, because
she's a very good. Like, end of the day, she's very, very great in the ring. She's a great worker.
Oh yeah,
and I think when she comes to the main roster, there was a little bit of a disconnect from NXT. I think it takes a little bit of time. She had so much steam that no matter when she lost, it was going to affect her appeal and her kind of aura. I just think that's what happened. That's the it's a double-edged sword with an undefeated streak. You can win all this time, you have so much of an effect on people and an aura about yourself, but no matter when or how you lose, it does take away from your appeal.
Yeah, and then there are ways to come back from it,
of course,
but it's a complaint that a lot of people have with the WWE. It's 50-50 booking. Mm-hmm. And 50-50 booking affects so many people, and if you're an undefeated streak and you're going to get beaten, hey, like, I'd rather you get beaten on a big show and it means something and it change your character. Maybe that's the night you turn heel, because that's it. Something has to come of it. Yeah. And I don't think with Asuka something came of it.
No,
I think that she just fell into mediocrity.
I think what happened was that they tried to still play off her aura of being undefeated even when she was defeated, and they stalled and they went to the Carmella feud and stuff like that, and then James Ellsworth and that came involved, and she was losing to Carmella in such just downright dumb ways that she just couldn't afford at that time to kind of take those L's. But it is what it is. She's fine now. She's the SmackDown Women's Champion. She certainly wasn't ruined through all of that. It was just she has some blocks to put back on her building.
Yeah.
Just plain and simple. But anyway, we digress. And, the Rumble itself, you said about, the surprise element and stuff like that. Do you have one that comes to mind which would be your favorite surprise of a Royal Rumble match?
It's going to be, there's a few. The one big cliche, which I'm guessing a lot of people would always say, is AJ turning up.
I mean, that was,
he was always, to me, the one that would never make it in the WWE. Not because of his talent, but because of his talent. I remember thinking, that's it. He's going to come in. They're going to clip his wings. That's it. He's done. I always saw him as Mr. TNA. I was a big fan of TNA. Yeah, and it's funny. Like, in about 2006, I was getting someone into TNA, and they just fell in love with AJ Styles. And I remember we made AJ Styles custom creator wrestlers on like WWE, like SmackDown versus 2015 and stuff like that. Like, we'd have to make the custom character because he didn't exist, but his moveset did.
Yeah.
Because they captured his moveset, and because Michelle McCool had the Faith Breaker as her finisher, which is just a Styles Clash. And so you could do it was Faith Breaker, but I was like, ooh, it's because it's AJ Styles, and because of, ooh, that's really smart. And so AJ walking up against Roman goddamn Reigns, I remember thinking, you know what? He looked so. Obviously, we didn't get to see all of him because of Roman is more important. But
that face that he pulled, oh my god! I'll never forget that. Just his lips and his eyes, and I was just like, "Show me the Titantron."
Yeah, because it was just the way it was just AJ, and I love the fact that no one realized that anyone would know who AJ Styles was, and that pop he got, and it was one of those surprise moments that, like, one of my favorites of all time, because it mixed there was always this talk about it. I'd just seen him. in some of the New Japan. I'd been following the second he left TNA. I was following him wherever he went. Like, not literally, I've not got that much money, but like, but I would watch like random matches when he joined the Bullet Club. I got into New Japan. Like, he got me into New Japan. That was AJ Styles that did that, because I was like, oh, so what's he in this Bullet Club thing? Oh, what's this Bullet Club? Oh, and Andy's still the best wrestler in the world. Oh, and he leads them. Oh my god, and he's injuring people legitimately. No, it's because. Wow. I thought he was never going to... And then first time he did the Styles Clash. But yeah, that's my first big surprise I loved. Also, just a random... I don't know if this is going to come in further, but if you're going to ask about funny moments in Rumbles or surprises, is... when CM Punk was... he just shaved... I think he had Luke Gallows and stuff, and he had his cult, which was Straight Edge Society.
Yep.
And he did the Rumble where he just got on the mic.
And cut promos. Oh, yeah.
I could save you. It's 25, I could save you. So throw him out. And then just get back in the ring and go, so I'm just going to tell you again about, I was watching that Rumble thinking, this is fantastic.
There was one moment in that Rumble, I think maybe... I don't know who it was. It may have been Zack Ryder. He was talking and he was mid-promo. He's like, I can say... And then just hits him in the head with the microphone.
Yeah.
It was this golden moment. And I was just like, this is incredible. Beth Phoenix came out and he gave her a go to sleep. I was like, this is amazing.
I know. It was just true.
That was a great... That Rumble I remember enjoying. I just remember it. That was 2010, 2011 maybe? 2010, I think. And I just remember really enjoying that Rumble, and he just made the first, 10, 15 minutes of it magical.
Yeah, because I remember thinking, okay, they can't let him do that. That was my big... I was like, not worry, but I was like, are they going to let him just promo for the whole... This is, at first, I've never seen this before. It was one of those, like... In the a kind of surprise but funny moment in the Rumble was probably, it might have been the Rumble 2000 or 2001 when they turned it into probably 2001, turned it into a hardcore Rumble. I think Raven walked down and just started throwing
that was the year that Kane went mental, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. That must be 2001.
2001.
It just became like a hardcore match, and I was like, oh yeah, there's no DQ. Oh yeah, there's no DQs. Oh okay, actually, you know what? I'm going to allow it. And
that reminds me when, do you remember when, I think it would have been 2006 or 2007, Sabu brought out a table and Kane eliminated him by putting him through the table? It was so good. I love, when you think of Rumbles in that kind of way, yeah, it's easy to think about surprises and, who won and who started. But it's all the bits in between that kind of make the Rumble what it is. And it's like little things like that don't happen all the time. But when they do, it's just... really fun. It's just the fun aspect of that match is so... It's just fun. There's no way really else to describe it. It's just the ultimate match.
That Rumble 2000, I think it was 2001, Kai and Tai kept getting eliminated over and over again. And there's a point in the match, you look back at it now and you think, God dang. But... one of them got a concussion. I think it was Taka Michinoku got a concussion because he got thrown over the top rope by one of the acolytes. The APA got thrown over the top rope. And they just had, and it was looking back at it now, what we know about concussions and CTEs and stuff. You've just got Jerry Lawler just going, look at him, he's going over again, and they just kept replaying him falling over the top rope because they think they come in 3 or 4 times. They'd last for about 3 seconds, thrown out hard way, thrown out, and you just got Lawler just laughing, and then and he's like, keep put the clip back on again, just literally constantly asking for this clip. And Kai and Tai must have been eliminated 2 or 3 times, but I'd seen about 15 replays of a pretty bad injury over and over again.
From memory, that injury was pretty nasty.
Yeah, it was really bad. And Lawler's I think he's gone to the hospital now, but I was like, wow. I mean, it was a pretty bad landing. So that... sorry.
To me, I think, you take away, like you said, with things like that, with it turned into a hardcore Rumble, and then you have people like Kane throwing Sabu through tables, and but then you also have the element of sometimes within the Rumble there's really good almost really good wrestling matches within the Rumble. You take like Shawn Michaels and Undertaker ending the Rumble in 2007. They almost had a 4-star match at the end of that Rumble. There were so many counters and, people, the element of someone going over the top rope and stuff like that. And I think with, like how we've been saying, like the Rumble is just like, it is the ultimate match because there's so many different pieces of the puzzle to put into that match. So, you go to like, when I was talking about like Shawn and Taker, you think of the Hall of Famers that have not only won that match, but also have just been a part of that match. You have people like Mick Foley who come back, at random times to be in the Royal Rumble match. And you've got people like The Godfather. Remember when The Godfather came back and it was just like, what, like, this is just, it's just, I don't think I can think of anything that is guaranteed. It is nearly 99% guaranteed that this is going to be a really fun time, whether the Rumble match is quote unquote not a very good Rumble or whether it's a great Rumble. There is that element of it's still a Royal Rumble and it's still fun. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, and I think also it's that there is a prize at the end of it. It's not a match for nothing. It's a match that kind of sets up stories for the whole of the year. And I think I was talking before earlier on the wrestling weekend roster recap. Another quick plug, but whilst on the guts to.
No,
but when I was
just plug away.
Got a shill. Shiller's got a shill. But like when I was watching. Just lost my thought there for a quick second. But Rumbles wise, there's so many Rumbles where this will come back to me in a second. Actually, no, I'll come back to it when I remember what I was going to say. I'll just trail you off there straight away.
Trust me, I do that all the time. Sometimes I'll start talking and then I'll be like, and yeah, this is what I'm talking about, and yeah. But I always do that, so don't stress too much. But
don't worry about it. I do live TV all the time.
Rumbles have that, even when we're not looking at the Royal Rumble match itself, the event, everyone's talking this year about how stacked the card is. You've got Ronda and Sasha, Becky, Asuka, Finn and Brock, Daniel and AJ, and the list goes on and on. If you think of matches at a Royal Rumble event that stand out to you, is there any that come to your mind that you're just thinking, besides the Rumble itself, this was a really fun match at the Royal Rumble event?
There's like Rumble wise, I always feel like there are really good matches normally on the undercard that people don't tend to talk about, mainly because the Rumble is all encompassing. I think thinking back on Rumble matches that I've seen, matches that weren't the Rumble, there's not any that really jump out at me straight away because of how connected the Rumble is to those. I can think about a year and think roughly probably who won the Rumble in that year.
I can't say.
Yeah, because of how it connected it is to Mania. But so that's a bit of a hard question. Actually, I'm gonna pass it to you. What would you say?
The easiest one that I always go to is Rumble 2000 and Triple H and Cactus Jack in the street fight. That is always my go-to if anyone asks me. But then there's other things like you think of Rollins, Brock, and Cena, the triple threat from 2014, I want to say, or 13, 15 even, maybe even 15. Whatever year it was, that was an incredible triple threat match that happened.
Was Punk Rock? Was that one of the Rumbles?
Punk Rock was that one? That actually main evented in 2013. That was the main event, if you remember. That the Rumble didn't go on last that year. Rock and
Punk Rock. Yeah, I'd say that's one of those matches that, again, I feel like it wasn't the main event.
No, it wasn't.
Because of the Rumble on that show.
The main event has changed in WWE's landscape today. It's not necessarily the last match on the show. Yes, that is the, traditional main event, but WWE have so many stars in terms of mainstream appeal that there's 3 or 4 main events at a Mania. There's, 2 or 3 main events at a Royal Rumble. Really, if it wasn't for the Royal Rumble match itself at the Royal Rumble, those 4 title matches, the 2 women's and the 2 men's championships, really you could debate any of those could main event a show. I really do believe that. Any one of those matches could quote unquote go on last, but in a sense, they're all main events.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain matches that, like title matches, that probably happened on Rumbles that I haven't thought about because, like, there must have been. I'm trying to think of, like, there's a memory in my mind of a Rumble where someone lost the title and then had to go into the Rumble, and I'm just trying to remember which Rumble that is.
I think this happened.
Someone had a title match. It's happened on several occasions.
I know that not last year before Roman lost, but he was the challenger in a championship match, and then he went into the
one versus
Rumble.
all thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that was the year before. That was when he was defending the WWE Championship in a Royal Rumble match. That was the year with AJ. Can we remember? I was saying before when AJ
it was,
came out,
wasn't it? Yeah.
you were saying like how he was, he was toe to toe with Roman Reigns. He was also toe to toe with the WWE Champion. Triple H.
But again, I totally forgot that.
Year. Yeah, Triple H won the championship, and then he fought Roman at Mania that year, and that was the kind of story. I think a lot of people forget
that was Roadblock
was
stuff,
for the
wasn't it?
WWE Championship, like. And it wasn't even down to Roman and Triple H at the end of that Rumble. It was down to Triple H and Dean Ambrose.
And then they had that sweet roadblock match.
Yeah, they had a really, really good match, and that was just, but a lot of people forget that was for the WWE Championship, I think. Well, at least in my mind, people forget about it.
I totally forgot. Like, I totally forgot that was for the championship because, again, like, I think there's a Rumble, I think the one that Flair won. The Rumble that Flair won back in the early... Because I've watched a few back. That was
like 92,
wasn't it?
Yeah, that was for the world title.
That was 93.
It would have been that and Romans that have been the only ones that have ever been for the WWE Championship, I think. I could be wrong.
And that was for a vacant championship. No, I think you're right. That was for a vacant championship. And, like, those kind of matches when there is a prize on the line, like a real, true prize, like a ticket to Mania is always great. Actually, brings back what I was going to say now. There was the year when Mysterio won the Rumble. There was a long period of time over that, and this is something that I hope that they kind of do this a little bit more often, which is the winner of the Rumble would defend that title shot. Like,
I do remember that.
And it was Mysterio had to defend it against like Orton and a few others, and they weren't fighting for, and it happened on several years because Backlash was always like, well, you're going to put your title shot on the line against me. It's like, well, I've just beaten 30 guys, well, 29. So, oh yeah, sure, why not? But I loved that concept of them constantly doing it, and I think there's matches along those shows where like you would see it just become bigger and bigger and bigger, which gave that win so much more because it's like, oh well, if I can beat you by proxy, I've beaten these other 29 guys. That was my point, I think.
Yeah, no, I get you, and I think there's with the Rumble, we were kind of in our little kind of chat here. We were talking about the sense of like both the women's and men's Rumble this year almost don't need the big stars coming back for the Rumble. It is very star-loaded. But I think in the past, WWE has relied on bringing in nostalgia acts to sell tickets. Look at a couple years back, you had people like Brock, Goldberg, Undertaker, all in one Rumble. And I think WWE is starting to realize that they have big enough stars to make these matches big. And I think, if you look at Rumbles in the past, they didn't rely so much on those nostalgia acts in the early 2000s and stuff like that. And then as you've kind of gone into like the later years, WWE have relied on that. And I think we're getting to the point again where they're not. But bringing me to my point is that, going into this year's Rumble, I can't really think of, with the exception of, well, even John Cena's questionably out of that match now, there is no past stars that they're relying to sell tickets on, men or women's wise. Do you think this is a good thing, or do you think that Rumbles should have that element of nostalgia acts being promoted?
I think it can only be a good thing that they don't have to rely upon that, because the nostalgia acts are getting old. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to, it's nice to see them, and I think the best performances in a Rumble from a nostalgia act, can be coming out, hitting their music, they pretty much leave straight away.
I agree.
But you don't need them to be there. So if you have the workers there, and it's something else that we said in the pre-chat, like I like the fact that now the WWE are taking that time to play with the toys that they already have, instead of going out or dusting something off, because they have the star. The star power now is the match. The star power now is the WWE. Whoever you slot into those matches, as long as they're good and they connect with the fans, that's always a good thing. And why rely upon people that are only going to be there on a short-term basis? They're great for Mania. They're great for popping a rating every now and then. But you want to have your core workers be in those matches and reward them. Because some of these wrestlers, that might be the biggest stage they're ever on. Some mid card and small carders.
I agree with you completely. Like, you look at, I know we talked about the Women's Royal Rumble earlier, but this is just a great example. Last year, sure, they didn't promote, the Trish Stratuses and the Leaders. It was a surprise, but we all knew that it's the first Women's Royal Rumble. Trish Stratus is going to be a part of it. Leader's going to be a part of it, and so on. This year, it's almost to the point where, there's 6 or 7 spots remaining, but it's not, it's not relying on the fact that we're going to see Trish Stratus in this Rumble. Sure, she might be one of those surprises, but it's relying on the 20-plus girls that you have that are all very good workers, and you can rely on each of them to promote this match to what it's going to be this year, as opposed to being, the thing is, the tagline is gone. There's no more first ever. It is just a Royal Rumble match, just as the dudes. So you're relying on people like Alexa Bliss coming out and saying she's in the Rumble. They're relying on that lady to, maybe she's going to put a few more butts in seats, as opposed to relying on people like Lita and Trish Stratus that will please people that used to watch wrestling in 2003 to see Trish Stratus come back and hit a chick kick. They're relying on people like Alexa Bliss to promote and put tickets in seats, which I think is a great thing. They're relying on people like Bliss and Finn Balor and Seth Rollins. The list goes on and on, as opposed to relying on people like Goldberg or Taker or Trish Stratus.
Yeah, and it's the best way to do business, because if you don't build the next generation of stars, you are going to stagnate, and nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to happen, because everyone will become comfortable, and that it's that whole like mercenary kind of like mindset. Sometimes people feel that someone like a Brock Lesnar or someone like a Goldberg has, that they're coming in and they just want to make a little bit of money and they're going to leave. End of the day, everyone's there to, they're all supposed to be independent contractors. So if you can't get paid what Goldberg gets paid, work for it. Get there. You will get there. But as long as the Goldbergs of the world exist and walk into the company, you are taking that spot from someone like, going back to that Punk Taker match. That Punk Taker match pushed a tag team match off the Mania card. I can't remember which tag team match it was.
It was a 4-on-4 intergender tag team match. I remember it because it was on Total Divas.
Oh, well, at least the promo worked. But I remember it pushed. Obviously, I'm guessing on the Total Divas afterwards, we lost the match because of those two.
They were all sad. They're like, the match went on before us went too long. I'm like, the match before you with Undertaker and Punk, they can go as long as they damn well please, Funkadactyls. But
that was not tons of fun at all.
Oh, jeez Louise, that's great.
You know what? But at the same time, like, to prove why you're supposed to be in that spot. Like, those two guys went out there and proved why they need to be in that spot. Becky and Charlotte went out and proved why they should be in that spot. Like, you go out and you take that platform and you do what you can with it. If you're just going to go out there and have a 3-minute match, but I've seen like if you watch some of the like old like WCW, ECW stuff, and you see guys, it's like, and you could tell you got 3 minutes, go out there and wow us. Like, the women were never doing that up until recently, because they were like, wow, we get paid either way, don't we? No one cares.
Yeah. No one gave
And
a crap.
it's
And
changed.
to go on your point,
Yeah.
like people like, the Goldbergs and the Trish Stratuses and whatever coming back, if you don't give the people like Finn Balor and Alexa Bliss and Sasha Banks the chance to do this now, in 15 years' time, you can't rely on those people for the little nostalgia pops because, those people that we are relying on, well, not so much now, but in the last couple of years, like the Takers and the leaders and whatever, in 15 years' time, they're going to be in their 50s, in their 60s. They're not going to be able to be relied on. We're going to have to rely on the people of now to help the next generation. So if you don't give that opportunity to these people now while they're in their prime, they'll never get to that spot that a Trish Stratus or a Goldberg or a whatever is at now.
I've just had a weird flash forward as well.
Oh my.
So does this mean that in about 30 or 40 years, Trish Stratus and Lita are going to be the Mae Young and Fabulous Moolah of the next generation?
Oh my God, imagine. You know what? I'd be on that train.
Oh,
I would
that
be
would
down.
be freaking awesome, wouldn't it?
I would be down.
Oh my God. I would love to
And
see
it's just
a Golden
like-
Girl style show with them. Oh, that would be amazing.
And oh man, that could go in so many different avenues. Like I'm just like, it's weird. WWE is so like, there will always be people that are just around the WWE forever, and I think it's safe to say that we're very big fans, and we're going to be watching as wrestling as long as we damn well please, and we'll be on that ticket for Trish Stratus and Lita being those two great old ladies that are just running around and whatever.
Yeah,
it may
literally.
be.
Travel down the road and back again. I would love to see them, yeah. Just like, I could imagine them out sightseeing with, or who would they be sightseeing with? They'd need like a male chaperone or something. Would they have? Someone like Santino Marella. Oh, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Oh my God, yes.
Marella
I'd
taking
be
them on
down,
like
I'd
little
be down with
adventures.
that.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a weird tangent. I just automatically, because like, again, you look at people
it's
just
a
saying
safe
nostalgia. Yeah, nostalgia in the future. Nostalgia in the future. Like, you're right. I don't look at anyone right now and would say they have the same star power in 15 years that a Cena, that a Reigns. I think more people would pop for Reigns in 15 years than would pop for Seth Rollins.
I agree. I agree with you 110%. He is, and this is no disrespect. I like Seth Rollins. I think he's very, very great. But Reigns is a bigger star. He is a star. You look at that man and you're like, that guy is a star.
Who is he? What does he do? And how do I get his number? Like at every single point.
He looks like a star. He carries himself as a superstar. He has that aura about him, and I think that's what WWE are trying to build. I think anyway. WWE lately are really trying to build that in so many more people than just relying on Roman Reigns or just relying on John Cena. They're trying to build that in other people and trying to put that essence into men, women, whatever it may be. And it's not going to happen overnight. You're not just going to be like, this guy is a star, and then all of a sudden he's on posters, he's on talk shows. It's just not going to happen. It takes some time, but I do think there is a sense of WWE are trying to create an equal level for more talent. I'm not saying everybody because everyone's on a different level, but they're trying to create at least an even playing field where you have an opportunity to make yourself a star.
It's exciting to see that. Like, seeing what's happening with Finn right now, I look at it and it's exciting. It's different. Like, I'm seeing them invest that time in people because they have to. Like, we're at a point now where they are no longer the biggest show in town. People can go somewhere else if they really want to. And because of that, you're seeing people now that it is all about their brand, like the individual person. And they're like, well, I don't want to sit here and wallow away on 205 Live. I'm going to leave.
There's
because
other places to go. There's other avenues to explore, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, and it is, and that means that it puts the WWE on their toes. We wouldn't have seen Finn even getting a sniff at the title if it wasn't for AEW.
No
way. No way. We wouldn't have got such a great NXT UK takeover show if AEW wasn't around the corner. We would have got a normal random takeover. Finn wouldn't have been there. It would have been quite mellow. It would have been quite calm. It would have been very normal. If World of Sport wasn't happening, we wouldn't have even got NXT UK. Like, there's so many
elements, and there's so many other places now where WWE have to make their talent want to stay. It's not about we're going to throw all this money at you. Sure, they can, and sure, that's a great incentive. All these people are, this is their living, but there's a sense of, I can still make top dollar in other places, and other places want to do more with me. It doesn't matter whether you're Finn Balor or Sasha Banks. It doesn't matter. These people their morale has to be happy. They have to be content with where they are.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you're saying about, invest and like kind of having these new stars and building them. They have to, and something like the Rumble is a perfect place to do that. Like I always look at, and I was looking back at some old Rumbles before we did this, and I remember automatically I thought of Maven, and I put this out on our Twitter because that Rumble made Maven.
It did.
Like drop kicking Taker over there. I remember before he was eating bananas with Tori Wilson in hospital and stuff, and I don't know what the hell was going on with this whole. I can just remember this vivid image of Maven being in like hospital bed and Tori Wilson bringing in a banana and starting eating it. Like that's what he was doing. He wasn't doing anything. Then he drop kicks Taker over and it's a surprise because you're like, oh my god, it's Taker, it's big evil Taker, and you don't take no ish from no one.
And at that point, Maven was just the guy from Tough Enough. You know what I mean? Like
he's just some guy, wasn't he? That was on TV, and then it was like, oh damn! And it was that point when he was like, oh, and there was the shock of everyone going, but this is the Royal Rumble, and this is Undertaker. Wait, he just did that. Oh, actually, okay, yeah. After the match, he got destroyed by Taker. That's classic, but like. For that brief moment and for the weeks after, he was the guy that eliminated Taker from the Rumble. He was no longer Tough Enough Maven.
It's like the Rumble, you have a potential 30 people that you can build as legitimate contenders for a world championship in that time span of an hour and 15 minutes or whatever it is. You've got 2 Rumbles this year. You had 2 Rumbles last year. That's 60 pieces of talent that you want to make credible for any one of those people winning the Rumble, whether it's whoever it may be in this sense, whether it's whatever. It's the WWE have to realize that that's 30 people or 60 people that they are dealing with, that if you don't make them look credible in a 30-person match, it's very hard to get them to look credible anywhere else, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about what you thought of talking about people being credible and stuff. What do you think about the Kofi Kingston? I'm going to call it the Kofi Kingston problem, because Kofi Kingston is, it's the Kofi. Naomi did it last year, and I'm guessing she's now going to be the Kofi Kingston. The hope spot, the Kofi Kingston.
When he does
every single
the crazy things to stay in the Rumble, and then
I'm going to be in the Rumble for another 15, and I'm now kicked out.
Yeah.
Naomi did it. I remember in the Rumble, that was the Kofi King. I call it the Kofi Kingston spot, and it is, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and I remember, but the Kofi Kingston spot brings itself a problem. The spot gets him over, but he can't really win the Rumble, because no one ever expects him to. So if he does win it, and as you said, I don't feel like he's been built up as a credible enough character on his own to take that title, to win the Rumble, because people would just think he fluked it, or, for him, his big platform in that Rumble is that he's going to land outside, and he won't actually, like he landed on pancakes last year, didn't he? So lands on something, that isn't... but over time, he can't do that spot anymore.
No, because even in the last few years, the spot has digressed. As in, it started off. He went through those 3 years where he was jumping on the chair and from the apron to the thing, and it was a really cool spot. But now it's almost to the point where it's not he's doing that for the coolness of it. He's doing it because we expect him to do it, and in a sense, I think even with just talking about Kofi and Kofi, Xavier, Big E, them to me are not, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, but they're not 3 people to me. They're the New Day. And I don't see them as credible singles challengers. I don't mean that they're all great workers. But you take one of them elements away from each other, you take one person out of that, and I could see that going sour fast. You look at what Kofi was doing before the New Day, and sure, he was a great hand. He was in the mid-card. He was kind of, staying in that kind of vein, he was never going. I don't ever see him ever was someone to break through into the main event.
See, there was a point. There was that very brief point when he almost did against Orton.
Oh yes,
and I think that's that. And I think he's just been really unlucky because. Do you remember Matt? What was he called in WWE? Matt Sydal.
Evan Bourne.
Evan Bourne, yeah. So Evan Bourne, I remember Evan Bourne and Kofi. They were a tag team. Boom.
Air Boom.
What were they called? Air Boom. Air Boom. Oh, there you go.
Terrible.
Okay. Oh yeah, but come on! Like I can remember, wasn't that? Not just that, but they were picked. Their name was picked on a WWE poll, if I remember correctly. And I voted for Air Boom. So come on, man! Like,
See, it's you are the problem. They were called Air Boom.
I am the problem. Like I voted for Air Boom because of the other choices. I can't remember what they were now. They were terrible. Yeah. And I remember really at the time thinking one of them should have been Jamaican Me Crazy, but it wasn't. I was really angry. But like because he had the Jamaican accent still at that point,
yes.
And he's come out of the Jamaican stuff on his. So I really liked that tag team, but then Evan Bourne at the time, the Spice situation, then he got his first wellness strike, then he got another one, then he injured his foot and he went off to the Indies. Like they looked like they were really building around those two as actually a revitalization of the tag division. There was a very brief time when there was, and he was just really unlucky that his tag team partner got busted and then got kicked out of the company, and he kind of swayed around the company for a bit, not really having a place to go or do anything.
Kofi just never really had a every time he got a spot, some circumstance or another, it went away.
Yeah, and then they just never gave him the ball back. Like, every single time. It just felt like he was being kept down. That might have been a Vince thing, but obviously he gave him it might have been that he couldn't. Vince is very, I was reading about some of this. He really respects people when they stand up to people, and are kind of like confrontational in the back. So maybe Kofi was just a really nice. I always look at sometimes people that don't get to the top, don't really break through. They're probably really nice guys, really nice people.
Because you look at the people on top, and you're like, I could see you being a little bit of a dick.
Yeah, exactly every time. But you'd look at those people, the good hands, the people that are happy to do the jobs, and you could just see them going like, "Oh, it's all right. You can get me next time." Yep. Like I would look at them as being like the person facing Hogan in every single one of his matches. It's like, he'll put me over next time. Like that's what some of those guys are. And I think Kofi.
What we were saying about Kofi is that with the Rumble and stuff like that, the Kofi Kingston spot or whatever, he will always be that person that is in the Rumble for a nice chunk of time. He will have a little moment, and then he'll get tossed out. There was many people in those years that are like that. Like I don't mean this in any disrespect at all, but like Cody Rhodes, he was always in the Rumble for a good chunk of time. And he would have a few little good moments, and then he'd get tossed out. People like John Morrison, even to a certain degree, had those moments in those Rumbles where he did last a nice chunk of time. But it is that kind of, that those people like Kofi and stuff like that, that to me, they aren't winning the Royal Rumble match. They're in there to provide the work and the chunk of the middle of the Rumble, but they're not the beginning. They're not the end. They're just the filler. They're just the filling of the two pieces of bread.
But yeah, and the booking a Rumble in itself, like if you think about it, that's a pretty mammoth. And you've just kind of alluded to the middle and the end and stuff. Like booking a Rumble must be one of the hardest things in the world. Because you've got to get. It's almost like I'd liken it to making like a playlist, like a music playlist, and like. Instead of it being like a CD, like if you're burning a CD, so you're burning this to CD. Take my old hat, put it back on. But like burning a CD after you've ripped it from a mini disc, and then like so you take this CD, but it's too late. You've burnt the CD. You give it to someone. Yeah, you have in that CD. You can either like have like just the same thing the whole way through. Or you can be a bit more creative and have like little peaks and troughs in there. Mm-hmm. So you could have like the beginning, like kicking off with like, don't wanna give my age away that quickly, but kicking off with a little bit of rock music, and then you come through, and then you bring it down to something melodic, and then you just kind of waves, and that takes some time to kind of craft together, and knowing how the audience are going to react over, an hour and a half, and keeping them there, being able to change on the fly, and having everyone ready, and getting them to hit their cues, and having exactly 1 minute and 30, you can't see the air quotes, exactly 1 minute and 30 seconds between each entry. Like, that takes goddamn time. Like,
it's like you were saying, I think in our pre-chat, you were saying you're a big fan of film. And to me, the Royal Rumble match is a movie. It starts with, introduction of two main parts of this Royal Rumble being 1 and 2. You have your twists and your turns, your surprises and your predictability in some sense. You have some story elements in all of this chunk of all of these 30 characters, and then you're getting to your grand finale, your finish, and it is like an hour span of a movie. You have your start, your middle, your end, and that to me is like, it's not like you could write a movie overnight. You have to take your time with this thing. It would be so hard to put every single element into this script, essentially. So to say what you kind of go over your point, it is like the booking of this match would be so incredibly hard because there's so many moving elements, there's so many people, and everyone wants to get their shit in, to a sense, too.
Yeah. I wonder how hard it would have been as well in the years of the Hogans, the Savages, the people that didn't want to go in at I don't want to go in at number 4. I want to go in at number 5. Why? No, actually put me in at number 3 and I'm going to last till number 20. Why? Okay, and then Hogan comes in, I'm going to last till number 21. And then something happens in the back with Elizabeth. I don't know. But, like stuff like, it's just, like, there's so many egos you'd have to keep in check in that. Like, it must have been a mammoth task the first time and every time after. Because you're right, everyone wants to get their stuff in. Every single person. Because that's the time that they can shine. And you said, like, about Cody Rhodes, and, like, I don't think it's disrespectful, to anyone to call them a good hand in a Rumble match. Because, goddamn, you've got, how many people potentially around you? You've got to provide cover for this person. You've got to maybe do something distracting over here because someone wants to have a breast break over there. You've got to then navigate people coming out. There's extra refs. The crowd are going off. It's not a normal match by any stretch of the imagination.
No way.
And
it's also you say people that are like good hands. Like, I always go back to Cody Rhodes. I just remember him being in chunks of Rumbles for long spans of time. But then you got to think of the nostalgia acts that are coming out that want to hit their, your DDPs want to hit your diamond cutters and whoever it may be. That person that is the good hand is always the one taking those spots. Every single time. It's the people that are in there for chunks of time that come in and take the diamond cutters and take the DDTs and then they toss them out. That is what their role is. So you think of all the elements that go in and all the stuff that would be in your mind if you're in there for 30, 40 minutes. That might be 2 or 3 nostalgia acts that you're taking a DDT or a frog splash or something from.
And going back to that film analogy, and theatre, there are no small parts. There are only small actors.
That is correct.
And so it doesn't matter. You be out there for 15, 20. Titus O'Neil in the greatest Royal Rumble went under the ring. Yeah. That moment. That moment was what? 11 seconds, if that. In 11 seconds, he cemented his legacy in Royal Rumble history.
It's so true. Whether it was
11 seconds.
It literally was just a moment in time that that's literally the first thing I think about when you say greatest Royal Rumble. I think of that. That is the moment of the greatest Royal Rumble. The event itself, the match itself, just that whole thing is, I think of Titus and I think of him slipping under the ring. We talked about it for weeks after it happened. It was everywhere and it was in pop culture. People seen that everywhere.
And it's such a big deal that an accident that has happened within something that was uncontrollable by the WWE, that it was involved. I don't know if you've seen Botch Club on the network.
Yes, and they went under the ring. Yeah. It's hilarious.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, the mythology of this is of a guy slipping over and almost dying. Very, very lucky that Titus O'Neil survived.
When we talk about, they had backstage things of people reacting to Titus slipping and that. they said usually there's like a bar or something that is in the center of that. So he would have went head first, and he could have potentially died in that spot. Like if you hit the top of your head, like they're just grateful that it wasn't there. But the fact that it wasn't, and it was such a hilarious. I remember I was watching the Greatest Royal Rumble, and I was just like, because it was whatever it was, and I was on my phone, I think at that point maybe, and I heard Titus's music hit, and I kind of just looked up. I'm like, okay. And then he just slipped, and I lost my ass. Like, I was on the floor almost, like, just dying. Like, just like, holy crap. And they just kept replaying it and replaying it. I'm like, I could watch this on loop for the rest of the whole time.
Every single meme that I saw come out, I watched that, like, obviously that being quite a controversial event as it was.
Oh, yes.
I did a live stream for it, and it's quite, I'm quite lucky to, when it's a Japanese, like you were saying that your closeness to Japan means that Japanese shows are at like a reasonable time.
Yeah, they're at like normal wrestling times.
Yeah, like for me, Japanese wrestling, and especially like even Australia, Super Showdown, like they were on at like normal times in the morning. So I was kind of up like 7, 8 o'clock doing this live stream, not expecting a lot from this show, ripping it apart as I'm watching the live stream, going, well, it's terrible, it's all propaganda, and you could see it all sounded like really forced. And in that one moment, everything broke down. Michael Cole started laughing, like for real, and you could hear everyone. And I could just think like Vince must have been in the back going, "This is why we came here. This is why we came."
Speaking of the Greatest Royal Rumble, do you think like
Segue.
Like, so we have the 30-man Royal Rumble every year. We had 40 at one stage. The Greatest Royal Rumble was 50. Do you think there is an element of, was 50 too many? It was like 50 too many people in a Rumble. Was that pushing the sense of the Royal Rumble too much? Of like, okay, a Rumble can become quote unquote boring.
I think looking back at the Titus worldwide thing, world slide thing, like that probably saved that Rumble a little bit. At that point, it was starting to sag a little bit, in my opinion. I mean, I was popping like crazy when Roderick Strong was destroying Daniel Bryan's chest with those fucking chops. I remember trying to explain to people, I was like, so Daniel Bryan came back, they're like, yeah, and I was like, what? There's a picture of him, what happened? I'm like, yeah, so this guy Roderick Strong, like, he chopped him so hard that like his whole chest looks like it's now hamburger meat, and they were like, yeah, that's really, yeah, and you could see the handprints, and that point, and just seeing like Angle versus Bryan for that very brief second and stuff, there were flashes in that match where I remember thinking, damn, this is, but again, what that Rumble in particular, we all knew that it was for nothing. We all knew that it was for a trophy that no one would ever speak about, or it wasn't for anything. And I think that 50 people can be too many. But obviously the 1 minute and a half, because I think we timed it as it was happening, and we did like a real countdown on the times as it happened. And they thinned that down to 30 seconds, 20 seconds of people coming in. Like Bubba Tunde came in, and I think it was in and out. There was like, who this guy Bubba Tunde? It looks like his name. But there was all these, and you could tell that you had to start kind of delving deep. It was like, okay, so we need 50 people. We need 50. How are we going to get 50 people? All right. Anybody just hanging around the Performance Center? Do you want to come to Saudi Arabia?
And I think the sense of it, like, yes, 50 was too many, but do you almost think that if it was a regular Royal Rumble match, say, and it was a 50-man Royal Rumble match, do you think you would have been as maybe bored in the sense of that? Or do you think because it's the fact that they're going to Mania, you would be more interested?
I have to say that during the 40-mans, I used to get bored.
Oh, so did I. I think 30 is the perfect number. It's just it's the right. Yeah. It goes for what, an hour and a little bit, roughly. It's just anything more, especially in this day and age when the world and society is have such a short attention span. They can't watch anything for too long. I think asking anything more than that, I think people would be turned off. At least I don't think they would, stop watching it by any means. But I think people would be a little bit more. It would start to lose its aura.
I think you also get to that point of the match as well where you know there's going to be rest breaks, and in a 30 like, because you're also asking some people that might have gone from one to the end to have, hour 45, so there's going to be rest breaks through this match, like the infamous Roman Reigns going having a nap outside for a bit and coming back in, like, we know that's going to happen if there's 40 people involved in this. Whoever's winning that match is going to go take a little nap for a bit somewhere, and then it makes you lose the match, because you know that they're probably going to come back with massive comeback at the end. Yeah, like one of my most hated moments but best moments was when Cena came back at that Rumble when he wasn't supposed to come back and he was fully injured. He came out. God. Yeah, and he came out and he came out in Word Life gear, and he just looked up and he was like, "Oh, I'm here." And I remember, and that was at Madison Square Garden. I remember just thinking, you know what? I didn't, not that I hate him, but I didn't really like resent the character at that point. So I was like, oh, it's Cena. Oh, it's Cena. It's Cena. But I think Triple H ended up winning that Rumble. I think.
No, Cena won that Rumble, but Triple H ended up being in the match at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That was the year that Cena cashed in, quote unquote, his shot on the WWE Championship at No Way Out. He went to February's pay-per-view and he said, "Randy, I want to fight you at No Way Out instead of Mania because I want the title now." And then Randy beat him by shenanigans, and then Triple H was like, "Well, I want to." He won the Chamber, Triple H did, and then he got a title match against Randy at Mania, and Cena come out and was like, "Nah, I'm in the match too." So then it was a triple threat. Randy ended up winning that. It was 24. So yeah, Randy would have ended up winning that match.
Was that WrestleMania Goes Hollywood? I don't know.
That was 21. 24 was Orlando. Edge Taker was also at that, and Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair.
I'm sorry. I love you. I watched that. I watched that the other day.
I really like something I've noticed with doing these podcasts is that I'm really good with remembering events and like what exactly happened and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, I'm actually good at something. I'll own it.
Dude, there's a lot of really weird random wrestling knowledge locked up in my brain, and I don't really get a chance to flex it that often, but I'll just be like, "Oh yes, did you know that during the event of Capital Carnage in 1993?" And it's like, wait, I shouldn't know this. Why do I know this? Oh yeah, because I like wrestling.
It's like the one thing that I'm just real good at. Like, if anyone asks me wrestling knowledge, I'm like, yeah, bring it on. Ask me stuff about life, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
If I was abducted by aliens and I was put in through some kind of game, like a game of chance or like a game of Jeopardy or something, yeah, like literal Jeopardy, like I would be like, yeah, specialist subject, professional wrestling between 1999, like between 1999 and 2005. I'll give you everything. I'll give you whatever you want. But anything around those areas might be a bit fuzzy, and probing is not really one of my happinesses. It would end out in a PG way. But yeah, and professional wrestling knowledge, especially stuff like that. I mean, I know that they were trying to make a move to being more of a stat game, and I think they tried this a few years ago where Cole was constantly throwing out stats to make it similar to like baseball and other sports coverage. That doesn't really work, but as you're saying, remembering random events and things that happened in there, those are moments that
we don't care about the percentage of matches this person has won in 2018. We care about when they've wrestled and why they wrestled there.
Yeah. Their motivation. It's one thing that New Japan does way better than anyone else in the world. Yeah. I become invested in matches. I don't even understand what they're saying, and I become invested in matches.
I don't speak Japanese, but I'm like, damn, I want to see that because that looks intense.
Yeah, and I can get what's going on through the medium of them telling it, through their wrestling, through something happening, through seeing emotion, like big emotions. I was listening to 83 Weeks podcast the other day, and they were talking about Triple H and, like, it's terrible, why did they let him go? And Bischoff starts to say, like, oh, he was terrorizing at the time, we tried to get him over and it just didn't work. But one thing that Triple H was really, really good at, and it's something that the Japanese guys are still really good at, is making big movements, like big movements.
Wrestling is so extra. It really is extra. You've got to be over the top. If you're not over the top, you ain't going to work.
and it's like you want people in the top seats to see you. You know, like everyone makes fun of that, like when someone goes for a sunset flip and they kind of whoa, like. Yeah, that is funny if you're watching it on TV. But if you're way up in the bleachers, like way up in the sky somewhere, and you're looking down at it, you're like, oh, that guy is about to fall over.
Exactly.
You wouldn't know it's an intricate maneuver. Like, wrestling is supposed to be played to the back. And you want, as you said, you want those big over-the-top characters, those big over-the-top moves that make the matches bigger than they are, larger than life. And I think
wrestling is larger than life. We're almost living vicariously through this, and it's almost what you want to do in life, but it's too extra, and almost to a silly. It's an element of pro wrestling that is kind of silly in a good way.
I think I've said this before on like some of my other previous live streams, but like Fowl Original is my wrestling gimmick. Like he's totally my wrestling gimmick. Like, and I love him. He's great. He is just me turned up a little bit. And you have to be, because if you're not, like, you know, you want to get over by being that little bit. It's you, and that's why I can really respect professional wrestlers a lot of the time, because it's just them, and they're just kind of playing to they're playing to the crowd as much as they can. They're playing to the back, and they're going to be extra. They're going to be like over the top as hell because they want your attention. They want you to look at them. There's so many. Triple H said this on about NXT, about All Elite Wrestling earlier on today, actually. And he said, they said, do you worry about All Elite Wrestling, this competition and stuff? And he said, we compete against everything. And it's something you said earlier about, you know, there being so many other kind of, you sitting there watching the Royal Rumble with your phone in your hand. Like, that's not anything against like generation now that have that ability, but when it was me, I ain't got no other screens to be watching. My eyes were fixated on that television. Like, I might have had a book in my hand, but I can't read, so I just look straight.
It's weird the world we live in, because obviously I'm not going to be sitting on my phone while I'm watching, you know, the Royal Rumble this weekend. But in a sense, it's like what I've grown up in is that I grew up with a phone from the time I was 9 years old. I'm 23, so I grew up in that very pivotal technology kind of. So like it's weird. Like if I'm bored, the first thing I grab is my phone, and it's the first thing I'm looking at. It's just because I'm so used to this society, is that's just what I've grown up with. And I do think, and I agree with you in so many ways, I wish I didn't do it. It's this generation, and I wish that we didn't have everything so accessible in a way, because in a way it kind of ruins a lot of different things, not just wrestling wise, but everything is at our fingertips. And in some ways it's amazing. If I didn't have my phone or something like this, I would never be able to do stuff like this and connect with people like you, because it just wouldn't be accessible. I mean, I'm on down the bottom of the world, and we're so
dude, you're where the water goes around the like the toilet rung. Like, that's literally where you are right now. Like, it's so weird.
In a sense, like if I didn't have that, we would never be able to connect. I'd never be able to talk to you. But in what you're saying is that it's so backhanded in what it does, because if something is boring, I don't look at it and I'm not paying attention to it. I'm not giving it my undivided attention, because I have my phone. I have something better that I can look at. And in the sense of wrestling, that may be the AEWs, that may be the New Japans. In a sense of, I could be watching New Japan on my phone while WWE events on in the background, and I'm picking and choosing what I want to watch.
And your attention can be split between both of them, so it's never like I fall under something called the analog millennials, where we knew about we lived through VHS, we lived through DVD, and so most of the main physical medias. Then we, in our relatively years, then got into gotta keep a bit of mystery here, but during our like middling years, actually not middle age years, I'm not that old, but like during those years, my formative years, like computers started becoming a bit more accessible. Like I remember being about 20 something and the iPhone coming out and it being like, yeah, but I could just use Facebook on my computer at home. Why would I do that on my phone. That's stupid. Get off your phone. What are you doing on your phone? Don't take a picture of yourself. We're having fun. Stop taking a picture of us having fun. Let's have fun together. And I didn't have an iPhone, so to me, I was like, well, this ain't really gonna last. No one's gonna sit there on their phone, and it's happened. And I don't look at that in a bad way. It took me a long time to kind of really want to get an actual smartphone, because I was like, I don't need it.
It's almost like so. In a sense of my generation of people, if it's not on Snapchat, it's almost like you haven't experienced that life, that moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're not taking a picture of you and your friend hanging out at your house or playing a PlayStation or being out and drinking with friends, if you're not Snapchatting and documenting that time, or Facebook, whatever it may be, it's almost the sense of it hasn't happened in our generation. If you, I don't know if you understand what I mean, but
no, I totally. There's not that many years between us.
No. But even in the sense of like watching a wrestling event, like it's just so natural for me to have a Snapchat put out on my story, and it's like, here I am watching the Rumble with all of my friends, and it's like almost if I didn't do that, people would be like, where were you? Why weren't you watching that? It's like, why are you knowing every part of my move? But it's on me as well, because I'm just like everyone else, and I'm documenting absolutely everything I do. It's a problem, and it's a good and bad thing.
I think it's not, and it's never been like a generational thing for me. But we all kind of enter into a contract when we kind of get involved with technology in that kind of personal way. Like, and I remember that I don't use my Facebook anymore because I lived through when Facebook started, and I remember it being like, ooh, like we got pictures of people I have not seen for ages. I've connected with some old friends, and I was like, that's great. And then it was constant, where are you? Now, luckily at the time, obviously, I put up status messages, look back at some of them now, and I'm like, what an edgy teenager I was. What an edgy teenager I was. Like, I read back one of my statuses the other day, and it said boiled egg sandwiches plus Big Bang Theory equals bliss. I was like, what kind of stupid stuff was I writing back then?
Some of the stuff, I was like 13 when I first went on Facebook, so some of that stuff they would write, and I'm just like, oh man, this is documented on here forever.
No, but I'm lucky because most of that time, like that was done. I got random stuff on maybe like forums here and there, but I don't have like a single thread where I could just go, okay, so this is you, and let's just, that connects to that social platform, and that connects to that, and that connects to, okay. There was a story here in the UK, very quick digression, but there's a story here in the UK of a lady that we had the first ever young police commissioner, and they were between the age of 16 and 18, and they were supposed to deal with youth issues within the police. She was brought in, and about a week or two later, and she was 18, she was the daughter of like quite a high constabulary or something. They found loads of racist, like it doesn't like months before she'd gone for this, racist tweets, which, okay, they were racist, but they were almost like she thought that she was having a discussion with friends on Twitter, like through the tweets.
Yep.
She didn't realize that, I guess, that they were going to be exposed to a larger platform. And just a few weeks later, they're like, okay, yeah, but you just said this about this minority, you just said this about this minority, how do you feel? She was like, that was so long ago. They're like, no, that was like 2 months ago. In her mind, she was like, well, that's just the internet, that wasn't me. And I think that there's it's hard lesson for some people to learn now, but the amount that you put out there, like, I love doing this. I absolutely love doing this. Doing it under Fowl Original pseudonym is fantastic because I get to do whatever I want, basically. But if it was me, I wouldn't necessarily say everything, because maybe it's just like the generation. What I've seen now, like how people potentially not get hurt by it, but they can maybe make that connection too much, and then like 2 weeks of December, I was on Twitter every single day doing loads and loads of stuff. That's how I connected with a lot of the community, because I was like, I got 2 weeks off work, I want to do some stuff, and I want to get connected with people from across the world because of my time zone. And it would be, if it wasn't for technology, I couldn't do that. But I do understand that doing this sometimes is going to take my attention away from something else.
Yeah,
but
and I completely agree. I agree in every sense. It's just, it's just, like I said before, everything is so accessible, and it's almost like you're under a microscope no matter what you do. So, I
feel for your generation in that sense that it's not inclusion as such, or exclusion. It's the kind of thing for me when I was younger would be like, hey man, I just got some like Nike shoes. They're like, yeah, you got Nike shoes, and if you didn't have Nike shoes, then you were not cool. Mm-hmm. But then over time, you just have to have that brand, and you don't realize it. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way that, like this generation
is, and I don't in that kind of zone, and we're just used to it, and it has its positives and negatives, like everything. In the sense of wrestling, I think the internet has taken a lot away from pro wrestling. In the sense of element of surprise, that's no longer a thing because everything is at our fingertips, and we are literally living and breathing pro wrestling at any time of the day, 24/7. We can access anything about wrestling, and it is the time of the fan wanting to know everything, when in a sense it would almost be better if we could eliminate that aspect altogether, and just it would make the product better as a fan viewing it, I think.
Do you think that, like, do you think that if we took away because it's a question that a lot of people, kind of ponder over for a long time. If do you think that, well, two things. Do you think we could go back to kayfabe, like true kayfabe, and do you think that would help the product?
I don't think we could ever go back to true kayfabe, just because we know too much about the art of pro wrestling. Take away all like dirt sheets and stuff like that. I think the world is too enamored with what pro wrestling is, and not only that, WWE and other wrestling promotions have been too open with the fact that the behind the scenes stuff of it, sure, it's interesting, and I'm the first person to get on that train and watch everything about pro wrestling because I love it, but in a sense, it almost takes away from the appeal of pro wrestling because we know so much about it. Yeah, like, okay, you take a TV show, you take a show like Friends, for example, whatever show it may be. Sure, we know these actors and actresses from this show, and sure, we know how this show was made to a sense, but we don't know every single script element of Friends. Pro wrestling fans want to know every single detail about a pro wrestling match, a pro wrestling segment, whatever. It's that element of the unknown of like, is this, what's this about? Instead of knowing it all the time and trying to find out exactly why A, B, and C is happening, just take it for what it is. Enjoy the product. Yeah. Don't dissect it as much. I love breaking down pro wrestling and knowing things about pro wrestling. Trust me, I'm the first person. But I know how I am as a fan, that I take wrestling for what it is, WWE for what it is. I try to always look on the next thing and where they're going. I try to get in my own mind and see where they're going. When so many people are so negative on the product, especially WWE, is just, you are taking away the fun for yourself. Stop dissecting it so damn much for everything that's happening and just enjoy the segment. Like, okay, like, you take the Mandy Rose and Naomi stuff that's been going on, and a lot of people have had their opinions on it. Guess what? I like that storyline. Was it poorly executed? Maybe, in a sense, yes. In theory, it's a real-life story. A heel is doing bad things. Stop trying to find out, stop trying to be like, but Mandy Rose wouldn't do that as a person. Amanda Sacramento, whatever her name is. She wouldn't do that as a person, but it's like, she's not that. She's playing a character named Mandy Rose. Stop trying to dissect this storyline for so much more than it is, and just watch it. You would watch a TV show and that kind of stuff happens and you don't blink an eye at it. But because it's pro wrestling, you blink an eye at it. And I think that's what the world is kind of formed into, is that it's just analyzing things way too much, and we live in a world where everyone is offended about something. And I think, I just think that, that's just an example. There's other things, obviously, but I just think we live in a world where it's too analyzed, and we just got to take things for what they are.
Going back to that point, you make that is very, very valid. The one thing that I have to say is, we said before about if you're going to have something like the Alexa Bliss thing, like you need to get people over. The Alexa Bliss segment got no one over, but that Mandy Rose segment got Mandy Rose over, got Naomi over. It got Jimmy. It's Jimmy Uso, isn't it? Jimmy, yeah, it got Jimmy Uso over with the female fans, I would feel, because they'd be like, hey, man, he's loyal. It got him over probably with some guys and some of the core audience as well, like, yeah, they're married. And you've used a real-life situation to your advantage, and everyone's got over with it. Like, everyone is over in that segment.
I don't care. I get a lot of things on Twitter, like people bashing me for this, but I'm a Mandy Rose fan. I think Mandy Rose is actually... She's obviously got a long way to go. She's got some potential. That girl obviously has an appeal about her. She does look like a star that Vince McMahon could put that woman on a poster in the sense of what she looks like. Just taking, I'm not...
Goldust loves her.
Yeah, she's a very pretty lady. And you could put that woman on a poster and people would look at that for whatever reason it may be. Girls would look at her for different reasons, men, whatever. But in the sense of this story, Mandy Rose is not meant to be liked. So therefore, they're doing their job there because she's doing sinister things like trying to, get in the middle of a marriage and try to get in Naomi's head and stuff like that.
That's the literal soap opera storyline.
Literally a face in a heel. You know exactly. There's no grey lines. Naomi is the face. Cheer for her. You want Naomi to beat the crap out of this horrible, vindictive woman. And Mandy Rose is doing anything she can. You look at their match on SmackDown this week. Mandy had Sonya, and they cheated to win. Mandy Rose, with the dirty win, and ran away. Mandy Rose is 100% is what a heel should be. She's cheating. She's doing horrible things, and no one likes her. So why, in every sense of the word, is everyone, just crapping all over this because what they use the little real life element is exactly what everyone says they want in pro wrestling in this day and age, is they want real life stories that would actually happen. Guess what? This kind of stuff happens in the world. Maybe not this extra, but you got to turn things up a little bit for TV. But Mandy Rose is a sinister woman doing horrible things, and no one should like her. People got to start realizing that there's people behind these characters, and they're just like how I said about Friends. Lisa Kudrow is Phoebe. We're not judging Lisa Kudrow for doing things that Phoebe would do. Do you get me?
Yeah, but I think it's that, you're saying about the Mandy Rose segment, it was so... Watching that kind of happen as well. I mean, the first we knew about anything happening was images and reports from people from the SmackDown taping saying, why is there a picture of Mandy Rose in a towel up on the screen? Oh, this is terrible. Oh my God, what's happening? Oh, this must be because, they go to the Attitude Era. There was so much furore over a picture of her in her towel on the screen start with. So and it was like, oh my God, this is the end of the women's evolution. This is it. It's over. And I was like, it's her in a goddamn towel.
There's all these elements of women. There's not every woman is going to be, straight up, I'm the best women's wrestler in the world. You have that, but there's all these different kinds of women and men that have all these different kinds of characters, and you choose whether to like the character or dislike the character. If that makes you dislike the character, WWE are doing their job. And all in all, talking about the Royal Rumble, is there not a sense of all these people that want to see Naomi throw Mandy Rose out of the Rumble this weekend?
I mean, exactly how many people want to see everyone else just clear the area and let her kind of like lumberjack style, two women enter, one woman leaves. Exactly. They just circle round lumberjack. That would be an amazing spot.
That'll be built it up. Will be eating it up. We'll be like, see you later, Mandy Rose. Naomi's got her little revenge on Mandy Rose for doing all these horrible things to her. That takes away her ability to go to WrestleMania. Naomi's triumphant. The good guy wins. That's a story. That is a pro wrestling story from start to finish.
Yeah, or they both take each other out, and then they fight on all the way along out to the back, and then that's it. You see them, that's done. But either way, as you said, there's some kind. There's a payoff. There's some kind. Yeah, there's a payoff. It meant something. That segment meant something as part of a larger storyline. But I think people nowadays, as you said, get offended quite quickly over things quite easily, and that's sometimes people get offended for for selfish reasons, for self-promotion reasons, but also sometimes people get offended because they're offended on behalf of everybody else.
I agree completely, and I think people are looking for reasons to be offended, just to be offended.
Especially with what you said about the negative kind of aspect of like the fandom at the moment. People are looking for a reason to hate. So, like, the host of that SmackDown show was pretty damn good. Oh, but Mandy Rose was there in her underoos.
And it's like, yeah, so what? Like, she's a woman. She's flaunting her body for a man to get inside this woman's head. Like, it's a story.
I mean, how many times have we seen a storyline of potentially a guy probably creeping on a... Like, we literally had the same storyline not that long ago with Lana, Dolph Ziggler, Rusev, and... Summer Rae, yeah. And we had a very, very similar storyline, and were people complaining about that? No, because it was a storyline and they didn't care. And that was even more real life when you think about it. Everybody knew that Rusev, Lana, and people ate that up, and you're right. Like, it's nowadays, again, I think it's... I said this about the whole Alexa Bliss thing, which is, everyone in the arena and everyone on Twitter was all very much, oh no. But those views, those videos, they got them views. They got, way bigger than anything. One of the videos had more views than the Roman Reigns leukemia announcement, the Alexa Bliss video.
Yeah, and it's like, in a sense, as a business, like, it is a little bit of, not clickbait, but just for a lack of better terms, but WWE want you to click on that video. They want to get more eyes on the product, and whether it means that they click on that video on YouTube and 3 other WWE videos come up on the side. Who knows? Maybe 5% of people will only click on another video, but that's 5%, then that's another 5%, and then before you know it, you have a bigger audience because of things like that. Yes, I agree with you that the Alexa Bliss segment was done with no payoff, and there was no real reason it happened. At least with the Mandy Rose stuff, it come to, Naomi and Mandy had a match this week. They have a feud. For people that clamour for women to have feuds that aren't just about titles, this is one, and you're shitting all over it, and it's not going to really do anything for WWE sense to do more like this.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the beauty of wrestling right now, is there's a lot of experimentation, and SmackDown is perfect for that. I really, really love SmackDown for being a different show every week.
Oh, so do I. It's so good.
It is every week. There's something different. Like the evening. It's gonna be a total tangent. But when the All Elite Wrestling show happened, so the rally, and so the Double or Nothing rally. And I remember thinking, all right, well, what are they going to do on Smack? How can they combat what's just happened across the road? You got Daniel Bryan in the concession stands, and just hanging out with the fans, shouting at them. I'm like, oh, okay, because normally you would have just opened in the middle of the ring doing something, or we had that show when we had that weird backstage kind of reminiscent of Paul Heyman telling people in ECW, like with Shane McMahon saying Paige, and some really interesting stuff. And I remember thinking, okay, this is the actual experimental show. This is the show where things happen. So watching the Mandy Rose segment as well was like, oh, well, this is how you could have done it on Raw.
I agree with you completely, and SmackDown is so good at... So you have a week like this week's SmackDown where it was very, for the most part, match heavy, and then you had a week like with the Mandy Rose segment, the Daniel Bryan segment, where it was very segment heavy, and both catered to the same and different audiences. Like it's SmackDown is collectively, I think, really it's not pandering to one niche of an audience. I don't think. I think it panders to casual fans, and it does to us, hardcore pro wrestling fans, whatever you want to call us. I think Raw, on the other hand, is so much on the casual fan side that we get turned off of it. But that's not to say, because we're not casual fans, we don't know how Raw is viewed from that point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Like, if you're deep within it, if you're kind of like deep in it, you don't see it's the echo chamber kind of thing. Like, I have to speak to non-wrestling fans to know if they know of a wrestler, because if I don't ask them, I'm in an echo chamber. I'll know about this person before they even the whole like all elite wrestling thing. Like, I know that talking about it, I'd say MJF, I'd say Joey Janela. Oh, we had that match with David Arquette, and they're like, yeah, you know the match where he bled everywhere? Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. David
So
Arquette,
I know
the guy
what
from
you're talking
Scream.
about, but if I was to
Yeah,
ask my
implicitly.
mum what's going on, she'd be like, stop speaking a different language to me.
Yeah, what language is this? But to me, that's a really good like yardstick almost to say, all right, but I'll go through a bunch of names and there will be that name, and all Elite Wrestling did that. It's like, Joey Janela, but then there's some people I know that I just go, do you know Chris Jericho? Oh, I know Jericho. Is he still wrestling?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I had someone telling me about what about that cruise he was doing and stuff, and I was like, oh dang.
I
So I'm
completely
telling him
agree with
about
you.
the cruise. But it's the big name, isn't it? And
like I said,
I guess you'd say.
I think I was saying to you on the pre-chat, or maybe earlier, but like I said about my mum and how she knew who Becky Lynch was. And it's like, okay, that is my measuring stick for how I know someone's gaining traction into pop culture, because if someone who does not watch wrestling, like my mum or like a friend or something like that, knows who Becky Lynch is, that is my kind of gauge to say, okay, Becky's making an impact because I know I love her, but I also love someone like Sonya Deville, or I love someone like Finn Balor, where my mum, if I said those names to my mum, she would not know who they are.
No. Yeah, and that's I think, like, in general, like Rumble wise, that's why I feel like it's a really, I always kind of say to people, if you don't watch wrestling, it's probably the best way to know if you'll like it or not.
I agree.
Because it's a bit of a marathon. You're going to see a lot of people you like it's a kind of match where you just have to sit there and just watch it. Like, in a normal wrestling match, in like say a 1-on-2 or a tag match or something, you have that time to explain to a non-wrestling fan, okay, so this guy did this thing. These two guys used to be friends, but now they're enemies, and you've got that time to kind of put it into context.
Yep, I agree.
Royal Rumble is
You
guy
don't have any
runs
time.
it.
You're like, okay,
Guy runs
you
out.
just take who you think you're going. People, and also people that don't watch wrestling, that watch a Rumble, I find, because I'm not explaining why this is happening, people gravitate to people just based on a flashy clothesline they did, or that looked cool, they did a cool splash from the corner, I like this person, and then they get invested in 30 different people, and you can kind of gauge, or at least for me with non-wrestling fans, I can kind of gauge what is appealing to them, as opposed to me hammering them with information and they're getting so overwhelmed. There's no time for them to prejudge in their head of who they think they're going to like just based on what I've told them. I have time to tell you who Tom, Dick, or Harry are. You just got to go and just decide for yourself. If you don't like wrestling, I think after a Royal Rumble, I don't think that, or at least it'll take a lot more time for you to understand wrestling. I think.
Yeah, because no, you're right. Like, I think you're getting that very brief amount of time. I think it's a really good way to kind of take like a taster menu of wrestlers.
Yeah,
because
it's like
after,
the appetizer,
like,
almost.
you can. Yeah, because you can see that person, and you might only see them for like 30 seconds, and as you said, they might like see something that they do and go, you know what? Who is that? But again, in a Rumble match, you can be watching that match, and you have that. It's normally after they've been eliminated. You're like, well, who was that person?
No, I agree
and you're like,
with you completely.
And like during the match, they're not going to, because they'll have seen a few people get quickly kicked out, and they're like, no, I like this person. I don't want to talk. I just want to watch. And then they'll watch, and then they'll be like, so who was that? Like, why was that? Did they do that all the time?
Like hammering them with information. You're like, okay, like how I said in our pre-chat, a friend of mine, she gravitated towards Natalia, and it was just after a match of Natalia's, and then I started hammering her with information about Natty, and then all of a sudden, you've got a Natty fan who's purchasing a shirt on WWE Shop's website because of just, it literally was the discus clothesline that she did. That is what gravitated that girl towards Natty. And it's so weird how pro wrestling can capture an audience like that. In terms of a Rumble, people are just essentially coming in and hitting, signature moves, and taking little break spots and getting thrown off for a top rope. That's essentially what they're doing in layman's terms, of course, in dummy terms, but that is essentially a Royal Rumble match. It's a 90-second break between each person. They come in, they hit their signature moves, and then there's lots of hope spots and stuff like that towards an elimination. And if someone can grab your attention in that 90 seconds before another person comes out, that's doing it. The Rumble is doing its job of getting more people to watch.
Yeah, because that person that only liked that person for 30, 40 seconds, and if they're a casual fan, they're actually probably more than likely to sit through a 3-hour Raw.
I agree.
And go, ooh, I like that, because again, they've got an idea of roughly who all these people are, and they know, oh, I don't like that person, that person's a bad guy, because they can feel that in the Rumble that was a heel, that person did a heely thing.
And even then, like, if they're only watching, I could say to this person after they've watched a Rumble, say, hey, Raw's on tomorrow, do you want to come and watch Raw? Hey, I want to watch Finn Balor. I like Finn Balor. They will sit through that show to watch Finn Balor, therefore they're seeing everyone else to get to Finn Balor. So therefore it's just like the string of it, and all of a sudden they're on the hype train of WWE or pro wrestling in general. And I think, as we're kind of winding down now anyway with this chat and stuff like that, with Rumbles and stuff like that, I just think all in all, the Royal Rumble match itself, take away the event, the Royal Rumble match itself does its job for getting more people to watch wrestling, I think. Because any WWE event that's what WWE's aim is. They want more people, more eyes on the product, and I think the Royal Rumble is the perfect example of the perfect match to do so.
I think it's from, and I was saying this earlier on in the week, like it's Rumble week now. From Rumble week, from this week onwards, is the most exciting time for me to be a wrestling fan.
Oh, me too.
Like every single year, because there's so many people who kind of come out the woodwork because they're like, oh, I haven't watched it for ages. I haven't watched it since Mania, or I haven't watched it since Survivor Series. I'll give the Rumble a shot. And there's just so many more people about that are watching it. And it's exciting because so many, like in the next few weeks, we've got potentially, it's not going to happen. I hope it doesn't. But Kenny Omega could come to the WWE in time for the Rumble. Theoretically,
it's a possibility. Like it's not
it's
out of the way.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's a possibility. It's not impossible. But I hope that it doesn't happen. But maybe that will happen. Like there's all these things that are happening, and then like from probably Wrestle Kingdom 13 onwards, I've been on the hype train like pretty much like the whole way, because I'm just like any little bit of news, This I was like, oh, this is the beginning to my Rumble Mania. I call it Rumble Mania.
It is the best time to watch. Just as much as you and I are deep in pro wrestling, it is just the best time to watch wrestling. Period.
And I think for anyone, and people say New Japan, Wrestle Kingdom is the best time to get into like New Japan. I would say that Royal Rumble's for a lot of people probably the best time of the year if you're not. If you're a casual fan or you're a lapsed fan, it's the best time to jump back in, because it's like the clock gets reset to a certain point, and you get a chance to appreciate a lot of people for that shot. Maybe they will be, maybe they can, and you see those familiar faces. I'm so dang excited. Thank you very much, Josh, for hosting me on this, man.
I have one more final question I have to ask. Who is walking away with the men and women's Royal Rumble victories this weekend? If you had to choose. If you can't choose, I understand, because it is very hard. But if I want to ask you, who do you think is walking away with the 2 Rumble victories?
All right. So I did this earlier on just in preparation for the show. Now, wrestling logic, I would think that looking at the people on the women's Rumble, that Charlotte Flair would win. Mm-hmm. There was speculation earlier on that potentially if, Becky lost a match, that she'd go into the Rumble Stone Cold. I'd like this. Becky could go into this Rumble Stone Cold style, just defeat everyone, and then just go, yeah, that's it, Ronda, I'll see you later. Like, that would be nice. But wrestling logic, it will be Charlotte Flair, because she didn't win last year. And for the men's, See, the men's, I thought that was the hardest one to pick because the
I
women's.
agree with you too, because I'm doing my predictions with someone else tomorrow on Wrestling Reverb, and I am still the women's one. I think I've got down, but the men's one is what I was like. I say one name and then I'm like, wait, this name, and then I really start getting in a big thing about I can't pick the men's Royal Rumble. I don't think I can anyway.
I don't think I'm going to see if I can look at my notes and see, because I looked at all the names, and this is my actual pick here, and it's for several reasons, which is Mustafa Ali.
Okay.
I say this because of the deal with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And apparently because Vince sees him as ultimate babyface. So I could see Mustafa Ali winning it, a kind of Rey Mysterio style deal, where he has to constantly, and that's why it kind of took me back to that, he has to constantly defend that championship title shot till he gets to Mania. I don't know who he'd go up against. I feel like it might be a Daniel Bryan. Yep. But say Daniel Bryan versus Mustafa Ali winning that championship, the first Muslim American to win that championship, to then go into Saudi Arabia and parade around the title, kind of how they wanted to do with Alberto Del Rio.
The logic is there. Like, like when you said that name, I was like, wait, what? And then when you actually explained it to me, that moment at WrestleMania, and then going into Saudi Arabia and whatever it may be, is very much... it's very... Like, not saying anything about Ali, because he's great. He's a great talent, but it's very business... It's a very business-driven move, but however, like I said before, WWE is a business, and they know what they're doing. I know WWE get a lot of crap, but I think they know what they're doing in a business sense. Maybe not, with their, they're questionable with some things with creative and stuff like that, but that's out of our control, as is anything that they do. But they have a business. They've been a business for a long time. They're a publicly traded company. So that pick at all doesn't seem weird to me at all.
But again, that's the whole thing, isn't it? There's 30 names and there's 30 infinite cases I could make for each single person on this list.
Could too. And like, literally anyone could say anyone in that match, and I'd be like, it probably wouldn't agree with me, and then I'd be like, wait a minute, but I could see why you're saying that person, because, look at WrestleMania. Because as we go into WrestleMania as well, I think we're heading towards the women main eventing, like, whether it's Ronda and Becky or Ronda and Charlotte, Ronda, Becky, whatever the equation is.
I would totally agree.
I think we're heading towards that. So when you think about the men's Royal Rumble, it's not necessarily, it's a main event match. Yes, it's not ending the show. So therefore, you don't have to put, quote unquote, the biggest star in that match. You can make a star for this WrestleMania because you can take that chance, because they're not headlining the show. In a sense, they are a main event and stuff like that, but this is where you can build your next star. You don't necessarily have to have someone that's already established to do this, because there's two pay-per-views in between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. There is a lot of other ways we can get our other title matches through then and now. There's 2 months, nearly 3 months of booking that we have until Mania, so there's a lot of ways to get from Rumble to Mania. So if you understand what I mean, not saying that Mustafa Ali isn't a star, like he is, he's new, he's fresh.
No, but he can be built. He can be built in that time. I mean, you could see him winning that Rumble, and then again, Ultimate Babyface having to defend it against some pretty top guys over on SmackDown who will happily do the job for him.
Because he's a great talent. He very much meshes with a lot of different styles, and he's he's not that typical everyday kind of worker. He works a little bit different to everybody else, and he just meshes really well. Mustafa's great. I think he's he's done nothing but impress me for the last year or so, even on 205. So coming into SmackDown and, getting wins over the WWE champion and getting wins over Andrade and whatever else and stuff like that, being in programs with people like Samoa Joe. And not only that, he is one of the main SmackDown guys that are in the Rumble, as, talked about SmackDown talent in the Rumble. So he's got to, at least if he wins, or if he's going to be that workhorse of the Rumble that is very much indeed in the Royal Rumble match.
So I could see, like, with Mustafa Ali, you know, you've talked about all the other stories that can happen in that match and other things. Other stories can still continue, but if the main story is, you know, like people can get thrown out and they can continue that feud, as you said, 2 pay-per-views on the way. I think that Mustafa Ali taking this is a family guy. He's lucky he's a family guy, but like he's a family, he's a family guy. And he's a really good. You know, when you look at like wrestlers and you look at them being the spokesperson for that company, Mustafa Ali is a spokesperson for that company. Like he truly is,
because he markets to so
like he
many
is,
different. Morally, he is what.
Plus, he's a Chicago boy, isn't he?
Yeah,
if I remember correctly,
I think he is.
So he could take away the Punk crown of being Chicago made. Like, so, you know, like
it is very much. I see your very much so. I see where your thinking is, and I can. It's weird because, you know, when you say some names and you can't visualize that WrestleMania moment of that person holding the championship. I can with him. Like, I can see.
That's what I mean.
I can see the 3 count. I can see him holding up the championship with, 90,000 people screaming around him. I can actually visualize that.
I can see him running down and grabbing his kid and bringing her into the ring and stuff. I can see the whole thing.
I can literally see it. But with some, you want to say, oh, this person can win the Rumble, but you can't visually see that moment in the ring. Like I can with him. I get where you're coming from. So logic is definitely there. But as we kind of wind up with this, I want to thank you for coming on and having a nearly 2.5 hour, well, more than that with our pre-chat, but I really do appreciate this because I want this more with people, because if we're having a 2.5 hour chat, and we could probably go longer if we really tried, we could just keep talking and talking and talking. I do appreciate you coming on, so thank you very, very, very much. And this is your little chance here at the end of tell people where they can find you. Tell them what your show is about. Just you have a nice little spot here just to promote the crap out of yourself.
Wow. Number one, thank you very much, Josh. Amazing opportunity to come on here. And welcome back to Podcast Life.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. You're totally welcome. I could talk for hours with this man. But if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter. I'm always doing stuff on Twitter, which is @Fowl_original. Over on YouTube, I'm youtube.com/FowlOriginalWrestling. What we do, and you can also go to fowloriginal.com, all my links are there. But mainly what we do on the show is we have a twice weekly show, which happens on a Wednesday night and a Sunday night, GMT 8 p.m. Also for the live pay-per-views, we've got full watch-alongs, and we're also doing roundtable discussions directly after each of the pay-per-views. So this week, for NXT TakeOver Phoenix, we'll be starting that. I've got 3 great folks on that. We've got go to my website, you can find out all their names. And we will be announcing the ones for Sunday for the Rumble. I've also got some cool content coming out over the ways, but you can interact with me on Twitter whenever you want. My DM's pretty much always open. And you can also #BookFowl, which is what Josh did here. And I hope that he got his money's worth, because he paid me nothing.
I definitely did. I'm very cheap, so I just won't pay anybody to come on this show. But I do encourage everyone to please. This guy is just great on. Obviously, this is how we kind of built a connection, was through Twitter, and he's very open to talking about anything pro wrestling, or just anything. He's just open to talking. He'll just always be a nice guy to talk about wrestling with. Our DMs are very long because we just message each other all the time about wrestling, and it's just nice. But this won't be the last time that he's going to be on here.
It's getting annoying. I'm joking.
This won't be the last time. Well, maybe after that comment, it might be the last time he comes on here. No, I'm kidding. This won't be the last time that he comes on this podcast, and I'm sure I'll be on his show from time to time. We'll do a lot more in the future, and just follow me on Twitter, Instagram. I'm on Facebook. It's all at Wrestling Rare, babe. You'll all find it. Find this wherever podcasts are kind of found. And now also I'm a part of the Pulse podcast network. So please go check out that. It's pulsepodcastnetwork.com. There's great shows from WWE to NBA to pop culture. It's got everything in between. So you'll find all your podcasting love there. And thank you again for coming on. And I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.